Chapter 45:11. Of course, Xiaohua knew that the answer Su Ji was talking about was probably the soul. However, he thought about it and answered in the opposite way. From what I know, it should be pure physical strength. Yes, you're right. Su Ji nodded. Whether it's the human race, the demon race, the spirit race, the devil race, or the divine race and the holy light race that you don't know about, they all admit that the most primitive power in this world is the physical strength. Of course, the physical bodies of the other races may be different from the physical bodies of the human race. However, as far as I know, an immortal king who once came into contact with the forbidden power said that the most primitive power in this world is probably the soul power. Because the soul was formed long before the physical body can decay and decay, but the soul exists forever. Junior understands? Xiaohua nodded. You don't understand. Su Ji interrupted Xiaohua unceremoniously and continued to explain, I don't know if you know about the underworld. The underworld has the power of the dead, which is also a part of the soul power. The power of the dead is the nemesis of all magic power, immortal power, and Buddhist power. The underworld is not a simple world. It is the place where all life is annihilated and where all life sprouts. Even someone as strong as the heavenly lord of punishment of the punishment palace doesn't dare to provoke the underworld because the underworld has a part of the soul power. Xiaohua, Daoists can become immortals by cultivating spells, Confucian cultivators can ascend to heaven by cultivating Confucian techniques, Buddhists can cultivate the 9 transformations golden body, demons can break through the starry sky by tempering their demonic bodies, then, those who can control the soul power can cultivate gods. Gods? Xiaohua pretended to be surprised. Gods, what are they? Can they also be cultivated? Su Ji didn't answer. He saw that Fairy Xingyu had stopped and turned to look at him. He nodded at Fairy Xingyu and stared at Xiaohua. Xiaohua, this is my last sentence. In the future, don't ask any other immortals such questions. Gods may be the end of the immortals' cultivation, or the end of the demon league, the immortal world, and the heavenly court. However, no immortal knows whether or not he will be a god at the end of his cultivation. Because there is a saying in the immortal world, gods can never be cultivated. Only the ancient times had gods. In the current era, there are no more miracles and no more gods. So, Xiaohua, there's no need to talk about taboo energy in the future. After saying that, Su Ji moved and landed beside Fairy Xingyue. He asked, Xingyue, are you ready? Yes, I can activate it now. Fairy Xingyue nodded and said, however, I need a breath of immortal qi. I just changed my body, so I can't activate the immortal mark. Then let me do it. Su Ji raised his hand to take the astrolabe, but Fairy Xingyu said worriedly, you just used a similar immortal technique. Can your body withstand it? Didn't I just say it? I don't need this body anymore. It won't be a problem. Su Ji indifferently said and took the star plate. Then he shouted to Xiaohua, who was in a daze, Xiaohua, quickly come over, we are about to enter. After saying that, Su Ji raised his eyebrows again. He looked at the distant starry sky and saw a fat figure. He snorted coldly and said, you're fast. It's only been a moment. I'm afraid you've already killed a few more people. Of course he doesn't care about other people's lives. Fairy Xingyue also said coldly, he only cares about his own life. Xiaohua was a little shocked by Su Ji's words. At this time, he had just come to his senses. He turned his head and looked at the body of the Buddha occupied by the Grand Mist Ancestor. He suddenly understood and sighed, I'd rather betray the world than let the world betray me. Let's go, I don't want to see this filthy thing. Su Ji raised his hand and threw the astrolabe into the air. He spat a mouthful of immortal qi on the astrolabe. The astrolabe did not change, but Su Ji's face began to look old. His sideburns were stained with white frost, and his face was full of wrinkles. Seeing this, Xiaohua was suddenly shocked and felt a chill run down his back. The warning of the Hudastacade's elder Wu rang in his ears again. Su Ji's words just now also rang in his ears. He thought with a trembling heart, I don't know if my body is worth the deep trust in Su Ji's heart? Su Ji's celestial spiritual chi landed on the astrolabe, and a silvery white brilliance appeared on the astrolabe. Layers of mysterious markings rushed out from the brilliance, and these markings were formed by densely packed runes. As the markings flew out, Su Ji rubbed his hands together, and thick crystal lights fell into the astrolabe. The markings then turned into hundreds of flying birds, and these birds had starlight engraved on their foreheads. Their eyes were like crescent moons, and when their wings flapped, the sound of wind and thunder could be heard. Go! Su Ji waved his sleeve. The hundreds of birds flew into the meteor belt with a quack quack sound. Let's go. We'll use the simplest flying technique. Su Ji returned the astrolabe to Fairy Xingyu and put his hands behind his back. A faint cloud appeared under his feet, and he rushed into the meteor belt with the birds. Fairy Xingyu took the astrolabe, raised her slender hand, and pointed at different places on the astrolabe. The astrolabe emitted several layers of obscure fluctuations, directing the birds to fly in an extremely zigzagging direction. However, after flying for hundreds of feet, the bird in front exploded with a boom. The birds behind it immediately flapped their tails and flew in another direction beautifully. The fierce interrealm storm around them was like the night wind, causing the feathers of the birds to tremble slightly. Xiaohua and the others naturally followed the birds and flew in another direction. The six-star space fragment looked very close, but it was extremely far away. After flying for the time it took for an incense stick to burn, one of the hundreds of birds would be destroyed in a short while. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, there were less than 20 birds left. Looking at the six-star-shaped space fragment again, it seemed to still be flickering with faint starlight in the distance. Su Ji said in a low voice, "Every realm has an edge. There's never an endless thing. The reason why it feels endless is because you're in the realm. As long as you're in the realm, if you don't have a magical power that transcends the realm, even if you reach the edge of the realm, you still won't be able to see the realm. So, you'll feel that the realm is endless. These space fragments come from different realms. The aura of each realm is different, and the aura of the fragments won't merge. Therefore, you can see each space fragment as an independent realm. You're in the meteor belt, so you can also see a larger space fragment. If you can't find a way to enter the space fragment, it will always keep a distance from you." Su Ji. Fairy Xingyu said with some dissatisfaction, "Didn't you say that you can't reveal too much about the immortal divinity? You can't reveal too much about the immortal realm to Xiaohua. How can you casually tell Xiaohua about the immortal realm? This is just to broaden his horizons. It's not considered teaching him the mysteries of the immortal realm." Su Ji said disapprovingly, "Besides, he's already seen this seven-colored shell. Do you think he didn't get anything from it?" "Hee." Xiaohua smiled and asked, "Fairy, I have a question, but I don't know if I should ask it." "Don't ask." Fairy Xingyu hurriedly waved her hand and said, "Your question must involve the immortal realm again." "Okay then." Xiaohua shrugged and immediately stopped asking. However, a smile had already appeared at the corner of his mouth. Sure enough, after a while, Fairy Xingyu urged again, "What are you asking? Why aren't you talking?" "Hee." Xiaohua blinked and asked, "Senior, you came from the Palace of Justice. You must know the various realms very well?" "I don't know." Fairy Xingyu shook her head like a rattledrum. "I'm just occasionally ordered by the Palace of Justice to check some things. I've met the demon clan of the 10,000 demon realm who broke through the realms in the Dawn Rain continent. I've also met the seven-colored sea god shell from the Red Sea domain in the 1,000 demons sacred realm. Well, the two seniors are also from the immortal realm. I'm very curious. Why is it so easy to break through the realms?" Xiaohua ignored Fairy Xingyu's shaking of her head and asked seriously, "Didn't Senior Su just say that it's difficult to break through the realms in the realms? It's naturally difficult to break through the ordinary realms, but the three continents are a bit special." Fairy Xingyu was a female immortal after all, so she couldn't help showing off a little. However, she only said half a sentence and stopped. She raised her hand and pointed at the six-star space fragment that still looked very far away. Look again. Is it close to that space fragment? But Xiaohua knew that Fairy Xingyu wouldn't say anything else, so he had no choice but to prepare to activate his delusion breaker Dharma Eye. However, before he activated it, he suddenly thought of something and said with a smile, "Fairy, I don't know any special spells. Of course, I can't see any clues. Everything still depends on your magic power." Fairy Xingyu glanced at Xiaohua and rolled her eyes at him. Then, she spat out a mouthful of quintessential essence at the astrolabe in her hand. Swoosh! A pillar of stars rushed out of the astrolabe and caught up with the few remaining birds in front of them. Caw! The birds cried out sadly and turned into fireflies. Then, the entire pillar of stars swept toward the space fragment like a whirlwind. Poof, poof, poof. The sound of explosions came from the pillar of stars. The aura of the realms had hit the pillar of stars and made it full of holes. However, the shattered pillar of stars also revealed a safe path at this time and fell into the brilliance of the space fragment. Su Ji was still in front. His figure followed the pillar of stars and fell into the brilliance. Xiaohua could clearly see that Su Ji's figure was getting smaller and smaller. Xiaohua watched Su Ji's figure shrink. Outside the meteor belt in the distance, the fat figure of the Grand Mist Ancestor appeared again. The Grand Mist Ancestor squinted and watched Xiaohua and the other two shrink and fall into the hexagonal space fragment with a solemn expression on his face. Chapter 45:12. The Grand Mist Ancestor originally wanted to fly over and enter the meteor belt with Xiaohua and the others. However, when he saw Su Ji spurting out immortal spiritual energy and activating the astrolabe, he stopped in the distance. It was only when Xiaohua and the others flew in that he quickly flew over. He looked at the backs of the three people and thought to himself, although this person looks a little unfamiliar, the way he activates the astrolabe is exactly the same as that person. If I'm not mistaken, it was him. Since he's still alive, why didn't he save me? This kind of senior, it's fine if I don't recognize him. With that thought, the Grand Mist Ancestor waved his fat monk robe. Two balls of black and white air flew out and turned into thousands of thin threads in the meteor belt. These thin threads seemed to have intelligence and were rapidly drawn into the turbulent flow of the realm. They were either torn apart or moved against the flow. In just a moment, the turbulent flow that was invisible to the naked eye and divine sense was clearly revealed to the Grand Mist Ancestor. He watched as the black and white threads spread further and gradually covered the space fragments within a dozen li. The black and white threads were indeed effective. Wherever there was a dead end, the black and white threads would cut off randomly. Wherever there was a way out, the threads would rapidly extend and reveal the path of light. Seeing this, the Grand Mist Ancestor smiled proudly. This old man has the yin-yang illustration manual. In this star-moon palace, there's nothing that can stop me. With that said, the Grand Mist Ancestor's figure flickered as he stepped onto the black and white thread. The black and white thread immediately turned into a cloud that carried him towards the nearest light path. When the Grand Mist Ancestor's figure gradually shrank, the figures of the scholarly cultivators and the great monsters of the demon race appeared. Xiaohua followed Fairy Xingyu and flew along the Pillar of Stars. The Pillar of Stars in front of the realm's aura presented a very strange distorted shape. It was like a fried dough twist with 6 revolutions. 3 of the revolutions were blurry and indistinguishable by the time they reached the space. The remaining 3 were crooked as they probed into the space's brilliance. As for the Pillar of Stars, it was destroyed by the realm's aura. In front of the 2 was Su Ji. Su Ji seemed to be very familiar with this situation. Without any hesitation, not only did he fly with the Pillar of Stars, he also spun with the Pillar of Stars. In fact, there were many times when he was still facing down in Xiaohua's eyes. Xiaohua didn't dare to act rashly. His entire body followed the rotation of the star pillar. He didn't dare to be careless at all. After circling around a few times, Xiaohua suddenly heard a rumbling sound beside his ears. In a flash, the hexagonal spatial fragment that wasn't too far from him suddenly appeared in front of him. The hexagonal fragment had already disappeared, and what entered his eyes was only an enormous light shadow. This light shadow was like a huge dome of heaven, covering the entire space. Moreover, under this dome of heaven, there were several kinds of indescribable auras. These auras interweaved together, blocking the light shadow. However, within the light and shadow, the star pillar had already pierced into the light and shadow, and a series of phantoms that resembled doors appeared in the light and shadow. At this time, Su Ji had already stopped. His hands moved slightly, and streaks of water-blue thunderbolts appeared like horned dragons, slowly rolling up and down his body. Fairy Xingyu's face was also solemn. She raised her hands slightly, put away the astrolabe, and took out a magic weapon that looked like a crescent moon. The soft armor on her body also emitted starlight, and a faintly discernible restriction protected her body. "Xiaohua!" Su Ji called out without turning his head. "Take out your magic weapon. I don't know what kind of space is inside this spatial fragment, and I don't know which realm this fragment came from." "Yes." As Xiaohua spoke, he took out the Tingjiao shears from his bosom. Under the urging of his magic power, the entire Tingjiao shears emitted a dazzling golden light. Seeing this dazzling golden light swimming in Xiaohua's hand like a dragon, Fairy Xingyu couldn't help but exclaim, "What a treasure! Xiaohua, I really didn't expect you to have a capital spiritual treasure. It's a pity that this capital spiritual treasure is somewhat incomplete." "I was lucky," Xiaohua said with a smile. "I snatched it from the Xiaoyu continent. That person took half of it that day, and I don't know where the other half is. It's good that you can use it." Su Ji didn't say much. He watched as the shadow of the star pillar crashed into the space gradually solidified. He shouted, "Xingyu, Xiaohua, let's rush in." But Fairy Xingyu and Xiaohua shouted in unison, urging their figures to rush toward the shadow of the door at the same time. Boom! Just as Xiaohua rushed into the light shadow, he felt that his surroundings were surrounded by clouds and mist, followed by the sound of thunder. Bolts of heavenly lightning fell on top of his head like the Milky Way spilling out. Moreover, there was an inexplicable pressure on Xiaohua's body. This pressure was so great that it felt as if the whole world was pressing down on his shoulders, making it difficult for him to move. However, this was nothing. The strangest thing was that in addition to the heavy pressure on Xiaohua's body, there were also tens of millions of tiny vortexes trying to drill into Xiaohua's body. A sour and painful feeling came from his body. Xiaohua snorted coldly and urged his transcendence golden body. While his body was flowing with golden light, his figure continued to expand. Swish swish. Without waiting for Xiaohua to straighten his back, two silvery white human-shaped lights that were at least 3,000 meters long appeared in front of his head. Moreover, from those lights, there was a kind of pressure that made Xiaohua feel fear. It surged toward Xiaohua like a surging tide, blocking Xiaohua's mouth and nose. Moreover, the pressure was like a mountain pressing down. Xiaohua's Mahayana cultivator's pressure couldn't help but be stimulated, and he tried his best to resist. However, this pressure was nothing more than a pellet in front of the mountain-like pressure. There was no way it could compare at all. Large beads of sweat dripped down from Xiaohua's temples. Xiaohua's straight body was slightly bent as an irresistible fear arose spontaneously. This is the fragment of the immortal realm? Fairy Xingyu was a little puzzled, a little surprised, and screamed with ecstasy. "Don't be in such a hurry to look at the fragment." Su Ji's calm voice sounded. "We didn't expect that the first fragment to be the same space as the immortal realm. Our top priority now is to quickly stabilize the immortal qi in our bodies. Don't strengthen it anymore, or our bodies won't be able to support it. Oh, quickly restrain your pressure. Xiaohua doesn't have any consciousness, so he can't resist our spiritual pressure." As he spoke, the mountain-like pressure gradually shrank and fell into the silvery light. Only then did Xiaohua breathe a sigh of relief. He opened his mouth to say something in a hoarse voice, but the abundant immortal qi rushed into his mouth and nose again. This immortal qi was of a much higher level than the yuan qi of heaven and earth in the three continents. When it rushed into Xiaohua's mouth and nose, it immediately caused discomfort in his body. He didn't know how many years he had not felt choking on water, but it rushed into his head. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly held his breath and condensed his qi, urging the Dharma power in his body to create a defense on the surface of his body. Before he could urge his Dharma power, Su Ji's voice sounded from the silvery light. His voice was like a thunderclap that resounded through the entire space. Xiaohua, don't urge your Dharma power. All your spells now are based on the Yuan Qi of heaven and earth in the 3 continents. This is a fragment of the realm similar to the immortal realm. The immortal Qi inside is similar to the immortal realm. When this immortal Qi comes into contact with spells based on the Yuan Qi of heaven and earth, it will change. If it's light, it will destroy the spell. If it's heavy, it will cause a backlash and invade your body. Okay. Xiaohua didn't speak and hurriedly nodded. Then, from another silvery human figure, an object that emitted the brilliance of the stars and moon flew out. Fairy Xingyu's voice also sounded from it. I hate stingy people like you the most. I don't believe that you don't have a protective heavenly spiritual treasure. If it weren't for the fact that this is a fragment of the immortal realm and I'm afraid that your body would explode from the immortal Qi, I wouldn't have bothered to give you my immortal armor. The object landed in front of Xiaohua. It was a very simple and crude star armor. This star armor was refined from some strange star stones. Between the star stones were some crystal threads that were as thin as hair. These crystal threads not only strung the star stones together, but they also flashed with traces of cold light, looking very sharp. Xiaohua took the star armor and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After all, this was Fairy Xingyu's star armor. How could he, a male cultivator, wear it? This suspicion. He still had to avoid it. You can't activate this star armor now. Su Ji's voice sounded. Put it on first. I'll activate it for you. Since Su Ji didn't say anything, Xiaohua could only obey. He threw the star armor, which fell like a fishing net. The 100 or so star stones on the star armor covered Xiaohua's body. Xiaohua deliberately looked at his chest. Fortunately, there weren't any extra star stones. Gotcha! Hundreds of silver-white thunderbolts appeared in the silver figure that Su Ji was in and gathered on every star stone on the star armor. Rumble. The star armor actually rumbled like a Dharma treasure. The 100 or so star stones turned into the shape of stars and began to rotate. The immortal Qi nearby also let out a cheerful cry and crashed into the stars. In just a moment, the stars turned into pieces and the entire star armor turned into a strange armor that covered Xiaohua's body. Once the armor was formed, the corrosion from the immortal Qi disappeared immediately. The corrosion on his mouth and nose also disappeared. Xiaohua looked at the armor that was flowing with starlight and moved his hands and feet. He frowned slightly. This was because his body didn't have any special discomfort in the ruins or the primitive continent. Why were there so many abnormalities in this fragment of the immortal realm? Gotcha! Xiaohua's problem was solved. Tens of thousands of tiny thunderbolts appeared around the silver figure that Su Ji was in. These thunderbolts were like horned dragons that surrounded the silver figure and rotated crazily. The silver figure also gradually shrank with the rotation of the thunderbolts. At the same time, a resplendent galaxy flew out from the silver figure of another silver figure and also rotated from top to bottom. Every time it rotated, some of the silver light fell into the galaxy. The silver light that was thousands of feet in size shrank almost simultaneously with Su Ji's silver light. Chapter 45:13. After the time it took to burn an incense stick, Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu's bodies were revealed again, but this time, they were different from before. Not only were there silver scars all over their bodies, but there were also lightning and starlight flowing through these scars, as if they were trying to stop these scars from spreading. The armor that they had worn before was also faintly flashing between the silver spots, looking erratic. The strangest thing was their faces. In the beginning, their faces were replaced by a flickering silver light. Later on, their faces gradually appeared. However, some parts of their faces were that of humans, while some parts were covered by silver light. It looked extremely strange. In the end, their faces were completely revealed. However, from time to time, their faces would be covered by the silver light. When their faces were revealed, there was nothing special about them. However, when they were covered by the silver light, a kind of majesty and respect was involuntarily emitted, forcing Xiaohua to move slightly. Presumably, behind the star armor, Xiaohua slightly narrowed his eyes and thought to himself, "This is the true appearance of an immortal." Phew! Su Ji let out a long breath, looking even more nervous than Xiaohua. Fairy Xingyu raised her arm, shook it a few times and said, "This body is really tiring. The feeling of freedom just now was really good." Su Ji nodded. "When we were in the immortal realm, we never felt that there was anything abnormal about it. But after leaving the immortal realm, we realized the benefits of an immortal body. There's a saying in my hometown, when you're not sick, you're not sick. When you're sick, you realize the importance of health. Let's go quickly," Fairy Xingyu said with a smile. "I can't wait. This time, we have to find the passage back to the immortal realm no matter what." "Xiaohua." Su Ji nodded, looked at Xiaohua, and asked, "Can you still adapt?" "It's okay for now." Xiaohua nodded. "However, I don't know what role I can play in this fragment of the immortal realm." "In this fragment of the immortal realm, you're just a mortal," Fairy Xingyu said with a smile. "Your magic arts, magic treasures, and other things can't be used. Even if it could be used, its effect would not be comparable to an immortal artifact. Oh, don't rashly open your Qinkuan pouch here. Be careful that the immortal spiritual energy inside your Qinkuan pouch will burst. As for your Kunlun mirror, it should be usable, but I can't guarantee that it won't be damaged if you don't refine it with immortal qi." Forget it, forget it." Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "Just treat me as an idle person. With 2 real immortals following me, what do I have to be afraid of?" "Hee hee." Fairy Xingyue covered her mouth and giggled. "Then let's make a cupboard." After saying that, Fairy Xingyu released her lingering thoughts, wanting to look into the distance. Su Ji hurriedly stopped her and said, "Xingyue, it's better to be careful. Don't release too many lingering thoughts." "Got it." Goddess Xingyu smiled sweetly. Coincidentally, her appearance was covered by the silver light. A sweet smile seemed to pass through the space and into Xiaohua's mind. Fairy Xingyu did not release her lingering thoughts into the distance. Her figure flew slowly. Su Ji waved his sleeve and covered Xiaohua's body. He said, "Let's go," and followed Fairy Xingyu. After flying for a while, Fairy Xingyu released her star shuttle with a wave of her hand. At this time, the star shuttle was even more majestic than before. Tens of thousands of starlight rushed into the sky and fell in all directions, like a dazzling meteor shower. However, after a while, the starlight withered and disappeared into thin air. Fairy Xingyu's face changed drastically as she looked at Su Ji. Su Ji frowned slightly but did not care. He raised his hand and pointed ahead. The two of them flew over with Xiaohua. Xiaohua looked a little absent-minded. He did not pay attention to Fairy Xingyu's star shuttle. He was puzzled by the smile that Fairy Xingyu transmitted into his mind. "What are immortals? I have never seen immortals before, so I have never thought about this question. Now that these 2 exiled immortals have been here for a long time, they feel that immortals are similar to us. But today, when I really came to the fragment of the immortal world, I realized that immortals are completely different from us mortals. In Dao sect cultivation, the physical body is extremely important. It is also the foundation of becoming an immortal. Without a physical body, one cannot ascend to the immortal world. Previously, I thought that it was because the immortal spirit qi was different from the heaven and earth origin qi. If it were not for the protection of the physical body, the nascent soul would be destroyed by the immortal spirit qi. But now, it seems that if the physical body has not been cleansed by the spirit cleansing pool, it cannot withstand the immortal spirit qi. Then, how can I protect my nascent soul? Moreover, Su Ji had said before that even if I lost my physical body, as long as I cultivated my scattered soul to the 9 tribulations, I would be able to grow a physical body. Naturally, I would be able to enter the spirit cleansing pool and grow a physical body. It seems that the spirit cleansing pool is the most important thing. The spirit cleansing liquid in the spirit cleansing pool. What is it? What is the difference between it and the dragon cleansing liquid in the dragon cleansing pool? Xiaohua's question could only be a question. Not to mention that he could not find any answers now. Even if he asked Su Ji would probably not answer him. However, in a short moment he had a new question. He looked at the ground that whistled past. On the ground, there were either deep ravines or undulating mountain ranges. It seemed that everything on the ground was much larger than the 3 continents. He asked curiously, "Senior, Junior has 2 questions to ask." Su Ji looked ahead and answered expressionlessly. Senior said before that the so-called realm. As long as one is within it, one will not be able to see the edge. We've entered this spatial fragment, so how can we find the way out? Xiaohua asked. The spatial fragments in the meteor belt are all incomplete. They were used by people with great ability to set up defenses when the Star Moon Palace was refined in the ancient times. Once we find the location of the other incomplete part of the spatial fragment, we will be able to see the meteor belt. From there, we can fly to the other spatial fragment. Su Ji answered fluently. However, he stopped at this point, as if there were some secrets that he did not say. Xiaohua nodded and asked again. Senior said that there are fragments of realms parallel to the Thousand Demons' sacred realm, fragments of realms parallel to the immortal realm, and fragments of realms parallel to the ancient times. This time, when we enter the fragment of realms parallel to the immortal realm, the immortal chi inside is extremely dense. Even with Junior's strength, I can't withstand it. How can the cultivators who followed Senior in the past withstand it? Actually, it's like this. Su Ji said without any hesitation, although I don't have a space or a spatial immortal weapon, I still have the heaven and earth bracelet. Under normal circumstances, I respect the wishes of those cultivators and bring them here to gain experience. If an accident really happens, I will definitely keep them in the heaven and earth bracelet. Although staying in the heaven and earth bracelet is an insult to the human race, it's still better than losing their lives. Of course, if I didn't make it in time, like just now, they would have lost their lives. I don't have any good ideas. After all, Xing Yu's star armor isn't something that just anyone can borrow. Oh, also, Su Ji continued, previously, we also encountered some fragments of realms parallel to the immortal realm. However, the immortal chi inside those fragments was already thin. Although it was somewhat dangerous, it was far from being as serious as today. Also, Xiaohua thought for a moment and asked again. Didn't you have 2 questions? Su Ji asked curiously. Xiaohua smiled. Junior has thought of another problem. And, say it. Su Ji nodded. Know what you know, don't know what you don't know, you are suitable to be a Confucian cultivator. Senior said so. Xiaohua asked. There are also fragments of realms parallel to the ancient times. Then, the immortal realm should be of a higher level than the immortal realm, right? Yes, the immortal realm usually calls the immortal realm the immortal realm. Su Ji replied. Then, Xiaohua asked, Senior and the others entered the fragment of the immortal realm. Did their bodies feel uncomfortable? What about those lower-level disciples? At this moment, Su Ji showed a rare hesitation. After a moment, Su Ji opened his mouth. Xiaohua, this question. I can answer you. But I don't know if my answer is correct because I have never been to the immortal realm and I don't know what the ancient times were like. I also don't know what the ancient times were like when the Star Moon Palace was refined. I only know that some fragments are similar to the 3 continents and the realms below the immortal realm. Some fragments are similar to the immortal realm, the Demon League and the Heavenly Court. And some fragments are different from these 2 places. So Xing Yue and I think, listen carefully, we think that these fragments might be fragments of the ancient times. But whether these fragments are fragments of the ancient times or not, we don't know. And in these fragments, our bodies didn't change, and the bodies of those lower-level disciples didn't change either. I also don't know what I am talking about. Do you understand? Yes, Junior understands. Although the doubts in Xiaohua's heart grew stronger, He still heaved a sigh of relief. Are you sure you understand? Su Ji asked curiously. I won't hide it from you. I thought about this before, but this matter has nothing to do with cultivation and returning to the immortal realm. I just thought about it and threw it away. And this junior thinks so too, Xiaohua said with a smile. This junior just had a sudden whim. Then, the two of them fell silent. They flew forward silently. Xiaohua didn't know what Su Ji was thinking, but he knew that although Su Ji was an immortal, Su Ji didn't understand the ancient times as well as Xiaohua. Not only had Xiaohua been to the immortal realm, but Xiaohua's Fortune Gate disciples had also been there. When those 5th grade Essence Force disciples were in the immortal realm, their bodies didn't go through any special tempering, and they also didn't experience the same problem as today. And Xiaohua's body, which was a half-god body, was actually corroded by the immortal spiritual energy. This was something that Xiaohua couldn't understand. Chapter 45:14. After a long while, Fairy Xingyu saw some colorful lights filling the sky in front of her. She said in surprise, Su Ji, look, there is still light in this space fragment. Maybe there is an ancient cave residence. Our opportunity has come. Don't be careless, Su Ji hurriedly reminded her. The more abodes there are, the more celestial beasts there will be. You must be careful. I know. Do I need you to tell me that? Fairy Xingyu said indifferently and sped up again. As if reminded by the light, Su Ji hesitated and said, Xiaohua, I think the problem you mentioned just now is like this. Before Daoist cultivators ascend to become celestials, they rely on the qi of heaven and earth to cultivate. When they reach the celestial realm, they will not be able to adapt to the celestial spiritual qi. As for the celestials in the celestial realm, low-level celestials such as mortal fairies also rely on the celestial spiritual qi to cultivate. When they reach the high level, they will no longer rely on the celestial spiritual qi. Presumably, in the untainted divine realm, the foundation of cultivation is also different. Therefore, the cultivators will be troubled by the celestial spiritual qi in the fragment of the celestial realm. But in the fragment of the untainted divine realm, there will be no such confusion, right? What do high-level celestials rely on to cultivate? Xiaohua asked, hitting the nail on the head. Alas, that's why I don't want to answer your question. Su Ji sighed. You haven't cultivated to that level yet. It's really not good for you to know too much. After that, Su Ji stopped talking and flew ahead with Xiaohua. Xiaohua had no choice but to shut up. After another 10 minutes, the light was in sight. Under the light, there was neither a spiritual vein nor an abode, but a vast expanse of tall palaces that stretched as far as the eye could see. These palaces were tens of thousands of feet tall, but all of them were damaged or collapsed. If it weren't for the extremely beautiful light emitted by these palaces, they wouldn't be much different from the ruins of the mortal world. As they flew closer, Xiaohua saw that the ground around the palaces was covered with deep cracks and deep holes. These cracks and deep holes were obviously caused by a fight. Next to these cracks, there were some broken celestial artifacts scattered around. This. Fairy Xingyu looked at Su Ji in surprise. Su Ji also looked surprised. The two of them sped up again. Hiss. In just a moment, not to mention Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu, even Xiaohua could not help but gasp. Because right before the overturned wreckage, there were already many wreckages of several thousand feet in length lying on the ground. These corpses were different from the corpses of the human clan. Most of them were wearing armors and holding some fairy weapons in their hands. Inside the armors, there was either nothing, or some shells that looked like tree roots. Of course, there were also some corpses that had collapsed beyond recognition. Something's wrong. Su Ji suddenly growled. He raised his hand and a spear-like immortal artifact fell into his hand. He glanced at the bottom of the immortal artifact and exclaimed, Yi Qiong Heavenly Mansion? How is this possible? Fairy Xingyu exclaimed as if she had seen a ghost. She also raised her hand and another empty armor fell into her hand. When she looked at the mark on the inside of the armor, her face was as incredulous as Su Ji's. This, How is this possible? Then, Su Ji threw Xiaohua to the ground and said, "Stay here and don't move. Remember, don't move. This is very important." After that, without waiting for Xiaohua to answer, he rushed toward the dilapidated palaces in the distance. Of course, Fairy Xingyue was no exception. Her figure flashed, faster than the light shadow, almost surpassing Su Ji's figure. "Yiqiong Heavenly Mansion?" Xiaohua naturally heard Su Ji's exclamation. He did not understand what this Yiqiong Heavenly Mansion was. However, judging from the reactions of the two immortals, one was a law enforcer and the other was a law enforcer, this so-called Heavenly Mansion was definitely a famous place in the immortal realm. Moreover, since the two immortals did not want to go in with him, there must be some so-called secret of the immortal realm inside. Xiaohua naturally knew to stay where he was. Of course, Xiaohua only stood there for a moment before he came to his senses. Damn it, that's not right. This Xingyue Palace was refined in ancient times. Since Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu know about this Yiqiong Heavenly Mansion, this space fragment must have been left behind from the immortal realm in ancient times. In that case, thinking of this, a smile appeared on Xiaohua's face. In that case, this Yiqiong Heavenly Mansion must be a secret place in ancient times. There are endless secrets hidden inside. Damn it, this space fragment is a huge gold mine. Since I've already entered the gold mine, how can I return empty-handed? Since he knew that this collapsed palace was a famous secret of the immortal realm in ancient times, how could Xiaohua still stand in the distance obediently? He rolled his eyes and activated the flying technique of the soul cultivator. He stuck close to the ground and walked to another place. As he walked, he sensed his own space. Sure enough, as Fairy Xingyu had said, he could already sense his space here. Everything in the space could be taken out. Xiaohua even tried to put an empty armor and immortal weapon into the space. He could do the same. However, the armor and immortal weapon were not located in the original Shenhua continent. Therefore, Xiaohua kept some armor and immortal weapons into the space as he walked. Xiaohua also noticed some things like bracelets, rings, and storage bags. He did not even look at them. They were all put into the space. Xiaohua was already used to stealing things. It had even become a technique. There were many bodies lying on the ground outside the palace. They were either dense or sparse. When they were sparse, Xiaohua only took those bracelets, belts, and the like. When they were dense, Xiaohua took 4 out of 10 of them. This made it so that the density would become sparse and not arouse suspicion. Damn, these are all immortal weapons. The more Xiaohua walked, the more excited he became. This feeling of reaping without sowing was really rare and wonderful. However, after walking for a while, he didn't see Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue. Xiaohua walked to the other side of the hall. When he got there, Xiaohua suddenly stopped. He closed his eyes and seemed to be thinking. After a moment, he suddenly looked into the distance and thought to himself, "That's not right. Previously, in front of the palace, those armors. Oh, I'll take it as the place where the immortals fell. The immortals seem to have fallen in one direction, as if in the direction where I came from. These immortals seem to be blocking another pair of immortals. The direction of these immortals was similar to the direction where I came from. Moreover, there are more belts and rings here. These immortal weapons are also of a higher level. Could it be? Could it be?" Thinking about this, Xiaohua wanted to release his divine sense, but after a short moment, Xiaohua shrugged his shoulders and said with a low chuckle, "This Xiao came here as a mortal. Not only do I have no divine sense, I also have no magic power. I can't even open the storage pouch. All the strange things that have happened here have nothing to do with me. No matter what happens, I'm the most innocent." Xiaohua smiled. He carefully identified the direction and walked in one direction. Along the way, he used his mind to store all the immortal weapons, armors, and immortal slips into his space. Sure enough, in the time it took to finish a meal, a bottomless abyss appeared in front of them. Within the abyss, there were many 5-colored clouds. Amidst the clouds, 2 lights that were brighter than the sun floated within the abyss, illuminating the entire abyss. However, the clouds blocked the lights so they could not be seen from a distance. Oh my God! As soon as Xiaohua approached the abyss, He immediately felt the spiritual pressure in the light shadow that was even more vast than that of Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu. Xiaohua felt as if a heavy hammer had hit his chest. He could not get close at all. This is a big fish. Xiaohua was overjoyed and almost screamed. These must be two big shots who fought to the death. Xiaohua did not hesitate and hurriedly released his mind. Sure enough, the spiritual pressure was like a mountain or an ocean, but Xiaohua's mind could still get close. Of course, Xiaohua's mind was just a trickle that could only flow around the light shadow. Even so, Xiaohua could already see that these were two shells that were tens of thousands of feet in size. The shells were full of a mixture of golden and silver light. There were also two immortal weapons in the light shadow. One was shaped like a knife, and the other was shaped like a spear. However, Xiaohua's mind could not get close to these two immortal weapons. Damn it, you're already dead. Why are you still so stingy? Xiaohua knew that these two immortals who had perished together were definitely big shots in the immortal world. He gritted his teeth. It seemed that the immortal weapons and other items that he had collected earlier were all scrap metal. No! Xiaohua shouted inwardly. Even if this is a tiger, this Xiao will still pluck the fur from the tiger's tail. Thinking about this, Xiaohua's mind flowed like a stream between the tens of thousands of feet large shell and the armor. His mind, was like a sympathetic person's hand that was extremely affectionate as it gently wandered around the wreckage. It was unwilling to cross over inch by inch. When Xiaohua's mind passed through the armor and landed on the belt, Xiaohua's mind saw something that looked like a jade seal. Xiaohua did not hesitate at all. His mind moved like a hand and immediately put the jade seal into the space. Immediately after, a thumb-sized jade pillar and a pitch-black box were also put into the space by Xiaohua. When Xiaohua's mind was ready to leave the wreckage, he saw a pendant hanging on the belt. Xiaohua put away the pendant, but he still wanted more. Damn it, if I'm not afraid of being discovered by Su Ji, this belt, ksk tisk, forget it. The other wreckage was similar to this one. It also had a lot of harvest. In addition to the golden seal, there was also a pendant, a 5-claw-like pendant, a multi-pronged jade pillar, and a simple and unadorned key. Chapter 45:15. Phew! After looting the wreckage, Xiaohua let out a long breath and said with a smile, "Finally, this trip was not in vain." In order not to arouse Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu's suspicion, Xiaohua hurriedly turned around and wanted to leave. However, just as he turned around, he suddenly froze on the spot. He hurriedly released his mind in disbelief. Sure enough, a moment later, Xiaohua revealed a thoughtful expression and thought to himself, "It's a little strange. These two unknown immortals had clearly perished together. However, one of them is holding a weapon in both hands, the other is holding a weapon in one hand, and the other hand. Why is it covering his back armpit? His back armpit is obviously not injured, so why is he covering it there? There must be something he cares about there. Even if he dies, he must protect it." Thinking about this, Xiaohua urged his mind and moved the immortal's hand away and placed it on the ground. Then, his mind penetrated into the armpit of the immortal. It was very strange. The immortal's body was different from the mortal's body. When Xiaohua's mind penetrated into the armpit, the immortal's body actually split open as if it was melting. Then, a 9-colored brilliance bloomed. Within the brilliance, an indescribable polyhedron appeared. It seemed to be in this space, but also seemed to not be in this space. Of course, this brilliance flashed and the polyhedron was immediately taken into the space by Xiaohua. This polyhedron was different from the fairy artifacts that Xiaohua had taken into the space before. It fell into the space that had not been formed before. Seeing that the treasure was in his hands, Xiaohua did not delay at all. He turned around and went to other places to continue searching for armor, fairy artifacts, belts, and other things. Xiaohua originally thought that Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu would find him soon. However, what puzzled him was that Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu did not appear for a full hour. Could it be that there is an even more powerful restriction in this palace? Xiaohua looked at the palace in front of him. Although the huge stone pillars had collapsed, The beautiful stone walls were flashing with brilliance for a long time. Xiaohua had some thoughts in his mind. However, he was very self-aware. If Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu could not escape from the restriction in the palace, how could he? Since he was not empty-handed, why should he take the risk? Especially if there were taboos within this hall, then wouldn't he have touched the bottom line of the immortal dimension? Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue did not fall into a predicament like Xiaohua had imagined. They did not separate, but hurriedly shuttled through the collapsed and dilapidated hall side by side. There were also many corpses in the hall, as well as many precious weapons and other items. However, the two of them did not take a second look at them. They did not dare to release too much of their expanded thoughts and only extended them out a few hundred feet. However, their eyes were different at this time. One of Fairy Xingyu's eyes was like a full moon, while the other was like a bright star. Su Ji's eyes flashed with lightning. The two of them looked at each other with different gazes, as if they were searching for something. They flew into a huge palace. In this palace, there was a huge chair that had been split in half. On the stone wall above the chair, there was a plaque that gave off a milky white light. This plaque was now hanging at a slanted angle, and most of it was already broken. The gazes of the two landed on the signboard at the same time. Their bodies shook violently. At the same time, the silver light hidden under the armor involuntarily rushed out and wrapped around the bodies of the two. A moment later, the figures and faces of the two were once again revealed. Fairy Xingyu was shocked. She rushed to the front of the throne and wanted to take a closer look. However, before she could get close, the throne that had been split in half gave off an awe-inspiring aura, forcing Fairy Xingyu to retreat. She couldn't get close to the throne at all. Fairy Xingyu had no choice but to fly high and try her best to get close to the plaque on the stone wall. After taking a closer look, Fairy Xingyu's body stiffened. After a long while, she whispered, "How is this possible? This is really the Yiqiong Heavenly Mansion. The most mysterious immortal mansion of the legendary Yiqiong. This immortal mansion, isn't it in the immortal realm? How did it become a realm fragment of Star Moon Palace? Could it be that the Yiqiong Heavenly Mansion disappeared in ancient times? That's even more impossible." Su Ji shook his head and said, "Yiqiong is a celestial venerable who became a celestial venerable recently before we fell into the mortal world. His Yiqiong Heavenly Mansion only appeared in the last 20 million years. How could it have disappeared in ancient times? Unless there was another Yiqiong Heavenly Mansion in ancient times, there's no other explanation for it being in Star Moon Palace." Fairy Xingyu deduced without hesitation. Su Ji nodded and said, "That's possible. No one can guarantee that there wasn't another Yiqiong Heavenly Mansion in ancient times." But Fairy Xingyu hesitated a few times, and her face was full of doubts. She did not say the reason for the but. There seemed to be endless hesitation in her heart. Su Ji seemed to know what Fairy Xingyu wanted to say. He looked at Fairy Xingyu and opened his mouth, but in the end he sighed and closed his mouth. Finally, Fairy Xingyu probed, "Su Ji, you've been following me since we entered this heavenly mansion. Are you afraid that there are restrictions in this heavenly mansion and want to protect me?" Su Ji shook his head and said, "This heavenly mansion has been destroyed. How could there be restrictions? Moreover, the heavenly mansion is full of celestial generals who have been killed. Even if there were restrictions, I'm afraid they would have been triggered by them. However, I don't want to be separated from you because I want to protect you. At the same time, I'm also protecting myself." Alas, that's right. Fairy Xingyu also understood what Su Ji meant, but she still did not want to make it clear. She sighed and said, "In that case, you and I, in this heavenly mansion, we can't be separated." Su Ji smiled bitterly. "We'll search together and then come here. Then we'll be honest. That's the only way." Fairy Xingyu's smile became even more bitter. It seemed that if she was given another chance, she would definitely not enter this space fragment so easily. Afterwards, the two of them spent another hour walking through most of the halls. Afterwards, they did not touch any of the items or corpses in the halls, and they returned to the main hall. Looking at the throne again, Su Ji said, Xingyu, I think. We're in big trouble. Alas, yes. Fairy Xingyu stamped her feet in midair and said, "This is indeed the mysterious Yi Qiong heavenly mansion that is widely rumored in the celestial realm. But this heavenly mansion, why would it be in the ancient Star Moon Palace?" "The ancient Star Moon Palace?" Su Ji said with a faint smile. "Who told you this? I'm afraid you came up with it yourself, right?" "Why not?" Fairy Xingyu frowned and said, "Although we found this Star Moon Palace first, the token to open this Star Moon Palace can also be found in the 3 continents. This means that before we came, the Star Moon Palace already existed and someone had already entered. It's just that they probably didn't have your divination skills. After they came in occasionally, they couldn't find any trace of the Star Moon Palace. Even so, it doesn't mean that the Star Moon Palace existed in ancient times, nor does it mean that the space fragments in this meteor belt were refined in the Star Moon Palace in ancient times." Su Ji explained, "This Yi Qiong heavenly mansion is the best proof. The Yi Qiong heavenly mansion must have fallen into the Star Moon Palace within 1,000,000 years. Okay. Fairy Xingyu was impatient and waved her hand. "What's the use of saying this now? Let's find the divine cultivation mirror first." "The problem is..." Su Ji looked worried. "The divine cultivation mirror is just a legend. Who knows if it really exists? Even immortal King Tu Gong has never admitted it. Su Ji, do you know that there's no smoke without fire?" Fairy Xingyu said, "If Heavenly Venerate Yi Qiong wasn't immortal King Tu Gong's most trusted Heavenly Venerate, and if he didn't steal the divine cultivation mirror, how could this legend have spread in the celestial realm? If it weren't for this legend, how could the Yi Qiong heavenly mansion disappear from the celestial realm? Even the Palace of Law doesn't know where the Yi Qiong heavenly mansion is. I think..." Su Ji shook his head and said, "It's better if we don't look for it. How about we pretend that we never came here at all?" "How is that possible?" Fairy Xingyu smiled bitterly and shook her head. "From the moment we saw the Yi Qiong heavenly mansion, it was already difficult for us to escape from this strange vortex in the celestial realm. If you don't say it, I won't say it. Well, Xiaohua won't say it either. Plus, he doesn't know where this place is. Even if we returned to the celestial realm, who would know that we came to the Yi Qiong heavenly mansion?" Su Ji said sincerely. "Su Ji, I believe you. I also believe that you will never tell anyone." Fairy Xingyu shook her head. "But I don't trust Xiaohua. This guy has too many secrets. I can't guarantee that after he ascends to the celestial realm and hears the legend, he won't think of this place. Plus, I don't believe in myself. If the Palace of Law wants to know what we have done in the mortal world all these years, they won't be able to see what we have seen here." "But," Su Ji said earnestly, "if we start looking for it, regardless of whether we find it or not, we will be killed." "If we find it, we won't be killed," Fairy Xingyu said with a smile. "If we can't find it, we may not be punished. But if we don't find it, we may be guilty of a great crime. According to the legend, the cultivation mirror is the supreme cultivation method that can make one become a god. Whether you find it or not, it will be troublesome." Su Ji tried to persuade her again. He knew very well that if Fairy Xingyu found the cultivation mirror, she would definitely give it to the Celestial Master of Law. If the Celestial Master of Law wanted to keep this secret, he would have to kill Fairy Xingyu. However, if Fairy Xingyu couldn't find the cultivation mirror and any immortals knew that she had come to the Yi Qiong heavenly mansion, they would definitely suspect that Fairy Xingyu had secretly kept the cultivation mirror. The wisest thing to do was to immediately leave this place and never mention this matter again. Even if the Celestial Masters or Celestial Kings searched their souls in the future, they could still maintain their innocence. Chapter 45:16. Yes, I know. Su Ji nodded. He flew to a corpse and released his extended thought to examine it carefully. Fairy Xingyu always said that Xiaohua was stingy and greedy. Now it was her turn. She was much slower than Xiaohua. After a while, her celestial artifact could not hold too much. When she wanted to look for the storage celestial artifacts on the corpses, She found that most of the corpses did not have any storage celestial artifacts. Fairy Xingyu did not wait any longer. She threw away some of the low-quality celestial artifacts she had obtained earlier and put in better ones. Even so, looking at the many celestial artifacts in front of her that she could not take, Fairy Xingyu was very unhappy. Perhaps I should get Su Ji to collect more? Fairy Xingyue looked up at Su Ji, who was not far away. However, after watching for a moment, she was a little surprised. This was because Su Ji was observing more than taking action. He seemed to be searching for something. Su Ji, why don't you take these things? Fairy Xingyu was a little puzzled. What are you looking for? Su Ji looked up and replied, I'm not looking for anything. I just feel that these corpses seem to have been moved by someone. The storage celestial artifacts are all gone. Moreover, the armor and weapons on these corpses are all from the Yiqiong Heavenly Mansion. We don't know how to refine celestial artifacts. Even if we take all these celestial artifacts, we can't use them. Instead of that, it's better to just take some as evidence. Even if you can't use them, you can take them to trade. Fairy Xingyu urged. We have been in the lower realm for so long that our cultivation can't catch up with our peers. If we don't get some elixirs and secret techniques, how can we cultivate to the celestial master level? Xingyu, Su Ji said, didn't you notice? Most of the corpses in the heavenly mansion have storage celestial artifacts. We can go back and take a few more. Fairy Xingyu blushed and said in a low voice, at that time, I was shocked and wanted to find the truth about the Yiqiong Heavenly Mansion. I didn't notice this. Su Ji nodded and looked up at one of the corpses. He raised his hand and grabbed it. A jet-black software flew out from the corpse. He looked around and said, this is not bad. It's perfect for Xiaohua to wear. Tise. Fairy Xingyu rolled her eyes at Su Ji and said, he has worn it. How can I take it? The star armor's quality is average. Just give it to him. Su Ji responded with boredom. He was about to lower his head to search again when suddenly, several thoughts that were very similar to Yen Yen's came from afar like a gust of wind. They swept across the abyss, the corpses, and landed on Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue. That will was incomparably cold, filled with bloodlust and brutality. When it landed on the two of them, silver light immediately erupted. Yen? Su Ji was the first to sense it. His expression changed drastically as he exclaimed, there's actually an immortal beast here? Fairy Xingyue's face was also pale. She moved her body and said, of course there will be immortal beasts. But immortal beasts with telepathy? How can we resist them? Let's go. Io, Xiaohua. Su Ji hurriedly followed Fairy Xingyue and flew into the divine palace. However, after flying for a while, he realized something. Xiaohua is still outside the divine palace. This little guy. Fairy Xingyue said angrily, why didn't he wait in place? Why did he run? With that, the two of them moved like lightning in the direction of Xiaohua. The yin nian that fell on them was still like the wind, closing in on them step by step. Xiaohua was easy to find. Following the footprints he left behind earlier, Su Ji only flew for half a cup of tea's time before he saw the high slope filled with corpses in front of him. Xiaohua was holding a rod-shaped immortal tool that was several hundred zhang in size in his hand. He was clumsily climbing up, wanting to climb up the high slope. However, some immortal tools on the high slope were in a mess. Xiaohua accidentally fell into a huge armor. Xiaohua! Su Ji was both angry and amused. Before he could get close, he shouted, come back quickly. There are immortal beasts around the divine palace. Io, senior. Hearing Su Ji's voice, Xiaohua hurriedly turned around and waved the immortal weapon. Look, what did I find? This immortal weapon is just right for me. Idiot! Fairy Xingyue shouted, how can you touch the immortal weapon here? Why don't you put it down quickly? Xiaohua was stunned and asked curiously, Senior, didn't you say there were immortal beasts? Wouldn't it be better for me to have one for self-defense? Why do you want me to put it down? As he spoke, Su Ji had already flown close. Without saying a word, he raised his hand and pointed a finger. A bolt of lightning fell on the immortal artifact, causing it to shrink abruptly. Then, he waved his sleeve and was about to take Xiaohua away. However, even though the immortal artifact in Xiaohua's hand had shrunk, it was still incomparably heavy. Su Ji's figure was pulled down while Xiaohua's figure only flew up a few feet. "Throw it away quickly," Fairy Xingyue said anxiously. "The immortal beasts are coming soon. We have to hide in the divine palace quickly. If you take this immortal weapon, Su Ji can't fly quickly?" "No!" Xiaohua refused without hesitation. He held the immortal weapon in his arms and said, "Without this immortal weapon, I am powerless. With this immortal weapon, I can resist the immortal beasts." "Who do you think you are?" Fairy Xingyue was furious. She raised her hand and a ray of starlight was about to strike down. She shouted, "Do you think this immortal beast is one of the 6 great sages of the 1,000 demons' sacred realm? How can you be a match for an immortal beast?" "Xingyue," Su Ji shouted, "go back to the divine palace first and wait at the gate. I will fly back with Xiaohua." Fairy Xingyue was a little flustered and exasperated. She really didn't understand why Su Ji indulged Xiaohua so much. In her eyes, Xiaohua was just a mortal. Even if he had an immortal weapon, he couldn't be a match for an immortal beast. Fairy Xingyue stomped her feet and turned around to fly away. However, she stopped again after flying 100 feet. She opened her mouth and the previous star shuttle flew out again. At this time, the star shuttle landed in the air. It was different from before. Layers of immortal spirit chi swarmed into it and the entire star shuttle emitted a dreamy glow. In the air thousands of feet around the star shuttle, besides the immortal spirit chi, there was also a kind of frost-like cold air. Xiaohua thought that Fairy Xingyue was controlling the star shuttle to fly him and Su Ji. Unexpectedly, Fairy Xingyue raised her hand and pointed at the star shuttle. The star shuttle slowly rotated and hundreds of starlight rays emerged from the front of the star shuttle, piercing straight into the air. Fairy Xingyue turned her head and shouted, "Quick, I hope we can rush back to the divine palace before the immortal beast flies over." "Go!" Su Ji no longer waved his sleeve. Instead, he waved his hand. A bolt of lightning descended and sealed the space around Xiaohua. Then, with a loud roar, he grabbed the immortal artifact along with Xiaohua. His figure descended and flew towards the gate of the heavenly sanctum. Flying with Xiaohua and the immortal weapon was obviously a little too much for Su Ji. Big drops of sweat rolled down Su Ji's forehead and the silver light under the armor rushed out several times. Xiaohua was also in a dilemma. He wanted to throw the immortal weapon away several times, but when he saw the solemn faces of Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue, he knew that the immortal beast that hadn't appeared yet must be very powerful. If he didn't have this immortal weapon, he would not only be food for the immortal beast, but also a burden to the two of them. Although Su Ji was a little tired now, it was better than losing his life later. Oh! Suddenly, a strange beast roar sounded. When Xiaohua heard it, he couldn't help but tremble. Golden flowers appeared in front of his eyes and sparks flew in all directions from his Naiwen palace. Fairy Xingyue and Su Ji's bodies glowed with silver light at the same time, protecting them. Xiaohua was below Su Ji. He could clearly see that when the silver light appeared, traces of blood seeped out of Su Ji's body. Nimbus Immortal Beast! Nimbus Immortal Beast! Fairy Xingyue panicked. How could there be a Nimbus Immortal Beast here? Although Su Ji also showed a rare trace of panic on his face, he replied calmly, "The space fragments here are different from the ones we encountered before. It's normal for immortal beasts to appear that are beyond imagination. The problem is..." Fairy Xingyue urged the star shuttle and shouted, "If we were at our peak strength, we might be able to defeat this Nimbus Immortal Beast. But now, how can we resist this Nimbus Immortal Beast?" Divine Palace. Su Ji didn't mention the name of the Yi Qiong Heavenly Palace. He only said that it was the Divine Palace path. We didn't see the Nimbus Immortal Beast around the Divine Palace before. This immortal beast must be afraid of the Divine Palace's restrictions. We can hide in the Divine Palace. That's the only way. Su Ji mentioned the divine palace again, as if to encourage Fairy Xingyue. Fairy Xingyue gritted her teeth and flew toward the gate of the divine palace. Xiaohua also frowned and asked in a low voice, "Senior, what kind of immortal beast is this Nimbus immortal beast? Why is it so powerful?" "It's not appropriate to mention it now," Su Ji said lightly. "When you see it, you'll naturally know. In fact, it doesn't have to be this Nimbus immortal beast. In other places outside the meteor belt, those immortal beasts are not as cruel and fierce as the Nimbus immortal beast. Ordinary cultivators are definitely no match for it." After saying that, Su Ji ignored Xiaohua and focused on flying toward the gate of the palace. Awoo! Seeing the gate of the divine palace appear in front of her, Fairy Xingyue's face was filled with joy. Suddenly, she heard a roar coming from high up in the sky. Xiaohua looked up and saw 3 strange immortal beasts that were several hundred zhang in size flying over like shooting stars. Before they could even get close, Xiaohua felt a chill in the surroundings, and a bloody smell emerged out of nowhere. Moreover, within the space, there were some faint spots that appeared. These spots were like ferocious eyes that stared at the 3 of them. Looking at the place where the clouds were surging, the so-called Nimbus immortal beast's figure was revealed. This immortal beast looked like a huge stork. There was a scarlet bulge on its head, and this bulge was covered with marks of different sizes. Around these marks, there was a boundless amount of immortal spiritual energy clustered around them. Chapter 45:17. The head of the flying dagger immortal beast was flat and slightly long, like several sickles tied together. Its long, flying sword-like beak was the blade of the sickle. The neck of the flying dagger immortal beast was extremely long, with several thick tendons entwined together. Below the neck was the body of the beast, which was covered with triangular scales. The edges of the scales were either covered with fiery red fine fur or flat feathers. Strings of sparks splashed out from within from time to time. 2 pairs of bone wings stretched out from the waist of the flying dagger immortal beast. There were very few feathers on the bone wings, only some sharp protrusions. Every protrusion had a corresponding mark. The tail of the flying dagger immortal beast was also extremely long. This tail was segmented, and as it swung, layers of mysterious crimson runes emerged from the roots and surged to the tip of the tail. The tip of the tail had some fiery red markings. The markings seemed to be on the tip of the tail, but also seemed to be in the void. It gave off an unreal feeling. As for the abdomen of the flying dagger immortal beast, the 3 sharp claws that reached into the void occasionally slashed, creating cracks in the void. Damn it. Although he had not fought with the flying dagger immortal beast yet, Xiaohua had already sensed its power. We should let the golden-winged great rock take a look at this place. If nothing goes wrong, even the first great saint of the demon clan may not be a match for this immortal beast. Senior. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. This is the rhythm of a dead man. I remember that Zhu Qing did not say that the Star Moon Palace was so terrifying back in the Bronze Pillar country. How would Zhu Qing know the details of the Star Moon Palace? Su Ji looked into the distance, still wanting to rush into the Yi Qiong Heavenly Palace before the flying dagger immortal beast arrived. He only said casually, "If you want to find opportunities in the Star Moon Palace, how can you not pay a price?" No. As he spoke, the 2 flying dagger immortal beasts in front of him suddenly accelerated and disappeared in a flash. At the same time, fiery red bubbles began to appear in the void in front of Xiaohua and the others, like boiling water. Damn it. Fairy Xingyu cursed angrily. She rubbed her hands together in a hurry. Clusters of star-like mist mixed with brilliance fell into the void. Then, the rotating star shuttle suddenly exploded. Tens of thousands of star fragments rushed out of the star shuttle and fell towards the void, causing the surrounding space to collapse. At the same time, in front of the star fragment, layers of red flames surged out and enveloped an area of 100 miles. When the star shatter met the flames, it exploded everywhere. Fortunately, Fairy Xingyu was the first to react. The star shatter formed a kind of defense, blocking all the flames from reaching the crowd. However, in just a few breaths, a fierce aura rushed out from the flames in the distance. The space within hundreds of feet was extremely distorted. Then the space cracked inch by inch like silk. Boom! With a loud bang, 3 sharp sword-like red claws stretched out, passing through the space and grabbing at Fairy Xingyue. Whoosh! Fairy Xingyue had been accumulating her strength for a long time. When she saw the sharp claws, she raised her hand without hesitation. Silver light rushed out from her body. Her saber, like a moon, cut across the sky and slashed at the 3 sharp claws. Clang! A golden sound suddenly rang out. Flames appeared on the flying dagger immortal beast's sharp claws. Layers of runes were split in half, and blood was faintly visible. Suddenly, with a roar, the flying dagger immortal beast's sharp mouth appeared in the space in front of Fairy Xingyue's chest. This sharp mouth broke through Fairy Xingyue's star moon saber at lightning speed and landed on Fairy Xingyue's heart. Be careful! Su Ji was shocked. Just as he was about to move his body, a fierce aura descended from the sky above his head, causing Su Ji's body to fall slightly. Go to the door first. Su Ji did not forget Xiaohua, who was under him. With a wave of his arm, Xiaohua flew out like a meteor. Su Ji had just thrown Xiaohua out when 3 red claws formed a triangle and covered Su Ji in the sky. Even if Su Ji wanted to help Fairy Xingyue, he could not. However, at this moment, Fairy Xingyue waved her other hand again. Her saber was like a star, drawing a star curtain in front of the beast's mouth. Boom! The beast's mouth hit the star curtain and instantly broke it. Under this huge force, Fairy Xingyue's entire body flew out like a fallen leaf. Damn it! Su Ji was furious. The silver light around him shone brightly. Then, with a wave of his hands, layers of thunderbolts flew out like a tide and rushed high into the sky. The thunderbolts were like a tide, but the flying dagger immortal beast's sharp claws were like reef rocks. When they fell, they shattered the thunderbolts. The moment the thunderbolts blocked the flying dagger immortal beast, a dazzling thunderbolt flashed between Su Ji's eyebrows. Waves of thunderbolts flashed like spikes from within. When the ripples fell into the sky, the entire sky collapsed. An aura that was close to the will of heaven and earth overflowed from the collapse. As Su Ji grabbed between his eyebrows, a light as bright as a star appeared in his hand. The light pierced through all the darkness, and the vast aura instantly filled the entire space fragment. This is a punishment celestial weapon. Even though Xiaohua had already slowed down in midair and was about to descend, he could still easily identify the origin of the immortal artifact in Su Ji's hand when the powerful aura of justice, fairness, and justice rushed past him. He could not help but groan and look up at Su Ji. In the light and shadow, a punishment celestial weapon that looked like a spear appeared. The spear looked like it was only 8 feet long, but the light and shadow vaguely seemed to be submerged in the void. Endless thunderbolts appeared in the spear, and thousands of thunderbolts that revealed supreme majesty overflowed on the surface of the spear. Su Ji held the spear, and without any hesitation, he stabbed it toward the top of his head. Where the spear landed, the entire space was pierced, and the space within 100 miles was also transparent. In this transparent space, another flying dagger immortal beast could be seen, and a terrifying expression appeared on its ferocious face. However, the punishment celestial weapon only pierced a few feet. Ka-ka-ka! A burst of ear-piercing cracking sounds came from Su Ji's body. The armor on Su Ji's body broke, and pieces of flesh burst out from the armor. Even the space between Su Ji's eyebrows had a blood stain that looked like a thunderbolt. In the blood stain, white bones could be seen. Su Ji coldly snorted, and his hand that was controlling the punishment celestial weapon did not stop. He did not care about the collapse of his body at all. He wanted to kill the flying dagger immortal beast before he was powerless. Unfortunately, wishes were always beautiful, and the things in the world would never change because of true feelings. The punishment celestial weapon only pierced another 10 feet before the thunderbolts around it were gradually extinguished. The soaring aura was also contained within the spear. What was special was that the spear rapidly shrank until it was less than a few inches long, and it automatically fell between Su Ji's eyebrows. Aogg. The flying dagger immortal beast that almost died in the punishment celestial weapon suddenly let out a roar. It didn't escape, but it charged out from the void towards Su Ji. Su Ji hurriedly waved his hand and a spear-like celestial weapon appeared in his hand. Woo! He stabbed at the flying dagger immortal beast. Su Ji rarely showed his skills, but this spear was amazing. Although the celestial weapon didn't have much celestial spiritual energy, it still dodged the flying dagger immortal beast's attack and stabbed into the flying dagger immortal beast's body from a strange angle. Boom! The flying dagger immortal beast roared angrily. Thousands of flames appeared on its scales and instantly wrapped around the celestial weapon. Moreover, the flying dagger immortal beast's huge tail swept up a gust of wind and hit Su Ji's back. Facing the flying dagger immortal beast's close-range attack, the silver light around Su Ji's body surged. Waves of lightning also flashed under the flying dagger immortal beast's tail. Pa pa pa! In the crisp sound, several layers of lightning were destroyed. Su Ji's body was also swept by the flying dagger immortal beast's tough tail and fell like a stone. Damn it! Seeing the two celestials who had just met the two flying dagger immortal beasts and were at a disadvantage in the first exchange, Xiaohua couldn't help but curse in a low voice. He understood that the two celestials couldn't gain any advantage in close-range combat with the flying dagger immortal beasts. However, the main reason was that the two of them were in their physical bodies and not celestial spiritual bodies. They couldn't use celestial weapons and didn't even dare to use too much celestial spiritual energy. If too much celestial spiritual energy entered their bodies, not to mention fighting with the flying dagger immortal beast, even their own physical bodies would collapse first. What should we do? Xiao Huan naturally wouldn't stand by and watch, even if his previous plan was exposed. He only pondered for a moment, and the space between his eyebrows also flashed with a dark green light. His figure also stopped and prepared to return to help. But at this moment, a sharp flying sword pierced through the void and directly fell on the top of Xiao Hua's head. This sharp and heavy was extremely heavy. Xiao Hua felt as if a huge mountain was falling from the sky. How could Xiao Hua dare to be negligent? Raising his head, he saw several three corpses in thunder. He saw that in the surrounding void, one after another, green seal text rushed out and set up a lightning array within a few li. Rumble. Just as Xiao Hua's lightning and thunder technique was used, the third flying dagger immortal beast had already pounced. This flying dagger immortal beast was clearly smaller than the previous two, but the power that rushed out was not something Xiao Hua could withstand. The flying dagger immortal beast's 3 legs fell and the beast's mouth fell, destroying the exploding 3 corpses in thunder. Even the other green seal text scattered in the space were destroyed by the flying dagger immortal beast's tail. Damn it! How is this possible? Xiao Hua finally experienced the power of the flying dagger immortal beast. He cursed loudly, "Even I am not a match for this flying dagger immortal beast. In the entire 3 continents, who can pass through this spatial fragment? Whoever comes will die." Although he cursed like this, Xiao Hua's body still flashed with golden light, wanting to activate his transcendence golden body. However, as the golden light flashed, countless celestial spiritual energy madly rushed in. Xiao Hua's physical body uncontrollably swelled up, while the other part produced chaotic fluctuations. The golden light flashed and disappeared. Chapter 45:18. Xiao Hua was still unwilling to give up. More soul strands appeared between his eyebrows as he unleashed the bloodline power of God Shi Bai. Woo! The flying crane immortal beast seemed to have sensed Xiao Hua's abnormality and swung its huge tail at him. Amidst the whistling of the wind, the soul strands were destroyed one after another. The power of the bloodline backlash was generated from Xiao Hua's body. Alas! Xiao Hua sighed. He now understood that although he could use his soul cultivation in this space, his soul cultivation strength was far inferior to that of the flying crane immortal beast. Even if he used these soul cultivation divine abilities, he would only attract the suspicion of Fairy Xingyu and Su Ji. He would not be able to change the situation of the battle. Since the power of the soul can't do anything, I'll use the other most primitive power in this world. Xiaohua thought as he waved the immortal weapon in his hand. Woo! It smashed towards the flying crane immortal beast. Ping! With a loud bang, the flying crane immortal beast's huge tail hit Xiaohua's immortal weapon. Xiaohua's body was flipped over and landed far away. However, the flying crane immortal beast's body also shook violently. Its previously unstoppable momentum was suppressed by this strike. Whoosh! Just as Xiaohua was sent flying by the flying crane immortal beast, Fairy Xingyu and Su Ji, who were also sent flying by the flying crane immortal beast, moved as well. Before their bodies landed, they immediately shot out like flying arrows and flew towards Xiaohua's direction. Whoosh! The phalanx immortal beast landed in the sky. It no longer needed to flap its wings, but with a flap of its 3 legs, it chased after the 2 cultivators like a shooting star. Its 2 beak-like beaks even tore through the sky and bit down on the 2 cultivators. The flying crane immortal beast's beak was so powerful that with one bite, it devoured the space within 100 feet. Naturally, Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu's bodies were also devoured. Even before their bodies arrived, the silver light on the surface of their bodies had already entered the beast's mouth. Damn it! Fairy Xingyu panicked. She raised her hand and threw out an unknown immortal artifact. Then she flicked her finger. Boom! The immortal artifact exploded in the collapsed space behind her. Although it was not refined by Fairy Xingyu and the power of the explosion was much weaker, the force of the explosion still shattered the collapsed space. However, right at this moment, the spearhawk closed its mouth and the explosion and void disappeared. When it opened its mouth again, everything was gone. This is the power of the flying crane immortal beast. Fairy Xingyue was also shocked. She thought to herself, I'm afraid that it's really as recorded in the ancient books of the Palace of Justice. Only the energy-gathering celestial has the power to win. However, while Fairy Xingyue was still in shock, she used the previous explosion and the shockwave to fly far away. What Fairy Xingyue could think of and do, Su Ji could do as well. Su Ji did not wait to land. With a wave of his hand, several thunderbolts roared and rushed out. He also moved close to the ground. At this time, Su Ji did not care about the collapse of his body. Silver light danced on the surface of his body like a flickering shadow. In the blink of an eye, he was more than 1,000 feet away. Woo! The flying crane immortal beast that attacked Su Ji swept its tail. The entire space was filled with the explosive sound of immortal spirit chi. The space was split open by the flying crane immortal beast. Su Ji didn't dare to fight anymore. He raised his hands and 2 lightning swords shot out. Although they only managed to shatter a few of the scales on the tail, Su Ji had already reversed the force from the tail. Using the ingenious method of borrowing force to counteract force, he accelerated once again. Woo! Seeing that Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue had dodged the 2 attacks and took the opportunity to escape, the 2 flying crane immortal beasts were furious. They spread their wings and rushed into the air. In a flash, they flew above the 2 people. Then, the top of the 2 flying crane immortal beasts' heads lit up. The red bulge suddenly shone brightly. Dozens of fist-sized flames flew out from this light and covered Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue. When these dozens of flames fell into the air, immortal spirit chi immediately poured in. The flames suddenly turned into pillars of fire and fell with a loud bang, trying to imprison Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue. Damn it! It's really like a tiger being bullied by a dog. Fairy Xingyue was really angry. Even if the flying crane immortal beasts were powerful, when had she ever been bullied to this extent by immortal beasts? She could not help but curse. The silver light around her was activated like a waterfall. The star blade and the moon blade in her hands swung out respectively. The saber light was like lightning, immediately splitting several pillars of fire. Even the star shuttle that was flying with Fairy Xingyu pierced into one of the pillars of fire and destroyed it. However, just as these pillars of fire were extinguished, a slightly cold flame seeped into Fairy Xingyue's silver light and quickly entered her body. Oh no! Fairy Xingyue was really anxious when she saw the flame invading her body. She did not care about destroying the pillars of fire anymore. She pointed her thumb at the top of her head. Poof! The brilliance of the stars and moon poured down like a spring, protecting her body. The brilliance rushed toward the flame, trying to extinguish it. Just as Fairy Xingyue was trying to save herself, the flying crane immortal beast's thick tail swept down from the void again, aiming for Fairy Xingyue's chest. Now that Fairy Xingyue was in danger, how could Su Ji, who only had 40% of his cultivation in the immortal world, escape? The sparks that flowed out of the flying crane immortal beasts had turned into pillars of fire that trapped Su Ji. Su Ji waved the lightning in his hand and destroyed several pillars of fire in front of him. Suddenly, he realized that the flame was like flowing water, following the lightning in his hand and invading his body. Su Ji did not hesitate at all. With one hand like a knife, he cut off his other hand from his body. At the same time, he opened his mouth and a thunder talisman surrounded by lightning was about to spit out. However, the flying crane immortal beast's 3 legs fell from 3 directions. Su Ji did not know how many of them his thunder talisman could block. At this critical moment, the cries of the flying kite immortal beasts rang out once more. 2 even larger flying kite immortal beasts descended from the sky above the blazing sky palace. Damn it! Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue were shrouded in the shadows of the flying crane immortal beasts. It was as if the shadow of death had fallen. Both of them were disheartened. However, just as the 2 of them looked at each other with despair in their eyes, a strange sound rang out again. Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue were stunned. When they looked above them again, they were ecstatic. This was because the next 2 flying crane immortal beasts' legs did not land on Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue, but on the backs of the first 2 flying crane immortal beasts. The 2 flying crane immortal beasts, who were determined to kill Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue, did not dare to kill them. They spread their wings and swung their tails high into the sky, crushing the space within a few hundred feet to meet the 6 sharp claws. The sharp claws collided with the tails. Amidst the roar, the 2 smaller flying crane immortal beasts tumbled violently in the air. The larger flying crane immortal beast showed no mercy. Its sharp claws danced and grabbed the 2 smaller flying crane immortal beasts' backs, instantly tearing off some of their scales. The 2 smaller flying crane immortal beasts also swung their claws while tumbling, waiting for an opportunity to counterattack. Damn it, this is what it means to meet a worthy opponent. You guys have a good fight. Of course, Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue did not think that the 2 flying crane immortal beasts had come to save them. However, at this moment, their eyes were filled with ecstasy. They looked at each other and muttered to themselves. Then, they sneaked past the pillars of fire that had not yet been extinguished and flew toward Xiaohua. Ow wow! The 2 smaller flying crane immortal beasts were no match for the flying crane immortal beast. After a few rounds, they were already drenched in blood. One of them could not help but cry out in a low voice. While Xiaohua was sent flying by the flying crane immortal beast, the flying crane immortal beast was also blocked in midair. The flying crane immortal beast was stunned at first, then its bestial nature erupted. Its wings flapped crazily, and 3 sharp claws slammed down like rain, wanting to slap Xiaohua, this little thing, to death. Seeing that the flying crane immortal beast did not activate its flames and only used its sharp claws, Xiaohua was overjoyed. He waved his immortal weapon with both hands and used the ethereal steps. He used the sky-piercing staff technique to fight the flying crane immortal beast. Although Xiaohua was powerful now and was not restricted by the 9 levels of essence force of the 3 continents in this space fragment, he could not be compared to the essence-gathering immortal that Fairy Xingyue had imagined. After fighting with the flying crane immortal beast's sharp claws for a while, he already felt weak and numb. The flying crane immortal beast took advantage of the chaos and swung its claws at Xiaohua's body. Xiaohua's body, which was incomparably tough in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm, was as weak as mud under the flying crane immortal beast's claws. Several bloody marks instantly appeared. While Xiaohua was greatly shocked, his figure swayed, and he just dodged the sharp claws when the flying crane immortal beast roared and opened its mouth. The space above Xiaohua's head was swallowed up, and an extremely powerful suction force enveloped Xiaohua along with the ground. Seeing that the ground nearby was about to be torn apart, some corpses on the ground were being sucked in, and even some immortal weapons were being swallowed by the flying crane immortal beast. Xiaohua was quick-witted. He waved the immortal weapon in his hand and picked up the armor, immortal weapons, and other items within a radius of several hundred feet. He swept them into the flying crane immortal beast's mouth and used the momentum to escape into the distance. Boom boom. The flying crane immortal beast's suction force was very powerful. The armor and other items that fell into the beast's mouth all exploded. However, the explosions were like fireworks, and even though Xiaohua tried his best to escape, he still couldn't escape the range of the flying crane immortal beast's suction force. Bang, bang, bang. Xiaohua's face went pale, and in his panic, he circulated his soul technique once more, causing string after string of 3 corpses in lightning to appear behind him. Unfortunately, even an immortal artifact was unable to cause any waves in the mouth of the skyhawk. So what effect could these top-grade Dharma techniques of the cultivation world have? The 3 corpses in lightning only stopped the flying crane immortal beast for a moment before the beast's mouth came down again. What made Xiaohua most sullen was that one of the flying crane immortal beast's claws had reached his back at some point. Rip! Not only did it tear apart Xiaohua's star armor and Daoist robe, it also knocked Xiaohua to the ground. His body rolled on the ground, and the Grand Ascension Stage human race's face was completely swept away. Chapter 45:19. At this point, Xiaohua could no longer consider hiding anything. His mind was about to enter the space, ready to summon Daoist Witch, Celestial Being, and the others to fight. It was also at this moment, rumble. Huge thunderbolts surged over like a flood. Swish, swish, swish. After the thunderbolts, the light pillars of stars and moons also crazily bombarded. The pillars of lightning, starlight, and moonlight all entered the mouth of the flying crane immortal beast, temporarily dispersing the enormous devouring power. Roar! The flying phalanx immortal beast was furious. It raised its head and let out a long howl. Its angry gaze shifted away from Xiaohua's body, which was rolling like a pellet, and looked behind it. In the sky, Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu had quietly arrived. They each used their immortal spiritual power to save Xiaohua. The flying crane immortal beast spread its wings, and the entire space was filled with crimson flames. The bulge on its forehead was also flashing with brilliance. Fairy Xingyu secretly complained, while Su Ji roared, "Xingyu, you and I split up. I will lead the flying crane immortal beast to another place. You take Xiaohua and rush into the Heaven's Palace." Fairy Xingyu gritted her teeth and said, "All right, be careful." Just as Su Ji was about to fly up, another anxious roar came from behind Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu. The flying crane immortal beast that was pouncing towards Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu was startled and looked up into the distance. Su Ji saw this and hurriedly descended, quietly hiding beside a corpse. Fairy Xingyu also slowly descended. Sure enough, before Fairy Xingyu could hide herself, the flying crane immortal beast roared and flapped its wings, flying towards the battle in the distance. "Let's go!" Su Ji saw that the flying crane immortal beast had just flown away, and his figure immediately moved, rushing towards Xiaohua like a wisp of smoke. At this moment, Xiaohua was in an extremely sorry state. The bronze-colored skin on his back was exposed. Streaks of blood seemed to be facing outwards. Although there was no blood seeping out, the wounds were slowly wriggling and couldn't heal very quickly. Looking at Xiaohua's body, he was stained with some mud. Although he was holding an immortal artifact in his hand, his arm was still slightly trembling. Clearly he had used too much strength. Su Ji flew over his head, and without even looking at him, he grabbed him with his big hand. His figure fell rapidly again, and his flying speed also decreased. Damn it, what do I need that piece of junk for? Fairy Xingyu, who had originally been following Su Ji, overtook him all of a sudden. She looked at the immortal weapon Xiaohua was talking about and said in a low voice, "Even if you have it, you are no match for the winged crane immortal beast." Big sister. Xiaohua laughed bitterly and said, "With this, I might not be able to defeat the flying crane immortal beast, but I can at least preserve my life. If you don't have it, you can only collect my corpse. Quick!" Su Ji had been paying attention to what was behind him. At this moment he urged loudly, "Xingyue, don't say any more. The flying crane immortal beast has already noticed that we have left." Hearing this, Fairy Xingyu naturally turned her head back. Sure enough, with the addition of the last Nimbus immortal beast, the situation of the battle immediately became complicated. In just a moment, the two larger Nimbus immortal beasts were also injured by the three Nimbus immortal beasts. They had no choice but to slow down their attacks. Now that the battle had slowed down, the phalanx immortal beasts thought of their prey and looked at Su Ji and the others. "I'll help you." Fairy Xingyu did not dare to be negligent. She raised her hand and waved it, and a huge hand of stars and moon fell. Together with Su Ji, she grabbed Xiaohua and rushed to the gate of the Heavens Mansion with Xiaohua. "Ah wow!" Seeing that their prey was escaping, the two larger Nimbus immortal beasts spread their wings and pounced at Su Ji and the others with a roar. Boom! Unfortunately, before they could fly more than 300 meters, the three smaller Nimbus immortal beasts were even faster. They fell from the top of the two Nimbus immortal beasts' heads and smashed their tails mercilessly on the necks of the two Nimbus immortal beasts. The two Nimbus immortal beasts were furious. They curled their tails and stretched out their sharp claws again. Ka ka ka! With an ear-piercing sound, another Nimbus immortal beast's scales were torn and fell. In an instant, the five Nimbus immortal beasts were fighting again. Phew! Xiaohua was taken to the gate of the Heavens Mansion by the two immortals. When he turned around and saw the five Nimbus immortal beasts fighting, he could not help but let out a long sigh of relief. He could not help but cry out, "Damn it, this kind of space fragment? No cultivator on the three continents can walk out alive, right?" "Of course," Fairy Xingyu sneered. "Even we have to suffer under the sharp claws of the Nimbus immortal beasts. How can others leave alive?" Su Ji also said with lingering fear, "I guess this is also the reason why the Star Moon Palace disappeared from the three continents." Fairy Xingyu nodded. "I was also surprised earlier. Since the three continents have tokens to enter and exit the Star Moon Palace, there is no reason why there is no news about the Star Moon Palace. I guess the cultivators who entered the Star Moon Palace in the past were unlucky enough to encounter these Nimbus immortal beasts. Or maybe there are other Nimbus immortal beasts that are even more powerful. They were all wiped out here, leaving no clues behind. Oh no!" She had only said a few words when the battle between the five Nimbus immortal beasts came to an end. Another Nimbus immortal beast rushed out of the battle and pounced on Su Ji and the others. At this time, Su Ji and the others were only a few hundred meters away from the Yi Qiong Heavenly Mansion. "Let's fight!" Su Ji roared and the silver light around him shone brightly. Fairy Xingyu was anxious and shouted, "Su Ji, don't!" Before she could finish speaking, lightning flashed under Su Ji's feet and pieces of flesh and blood dripped down. His flying speed increased greatly as he carried Xiaohua. Seeing that Su Ji's fight was to speed up, Fairy Xingyu finally heaved a sigh of relief. She also hurriedly urged the remaining immortal qi to speed up. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Even Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu were not as fast as the Nimbus immortal beasts, let alone Xiaohua, who was carrying a heavy object. The three of them had only flown a few hundred meters. When they were halfway there, the Nimbus immortal beasts had already caught up. This time, the two groups of Nimbus immortal beasts had a tacit understanding. Two of the larger Nimbus immortal beasts rushed towards Su Ji, while the three Nimbus immortal beasts that came first pounced on Fairy Xingyu. Xiaohua was already regarded as an easy prey. Seeing that the five Nimbus immortal beasts were waving their sharp claws at Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu's heads, Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. He hurriedly shouted, "Leave me behind, run away from the palace gate, and run in the opposite direction." Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu were stunned and immediately understood. They looked at each other and urged their immortal qi on their arms at the same time. They threw Xiaohua toward the palace gate, turned around, and rushed into the distance. Seeing that the three of them had separated, the 5 Nimbus immortal beasts were obviously stunned. However, they did not have much time to think about it. Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu sped up. Just as one of the Nimbus immortal beasts was about to pounce on Xiaohua, the other 2 Nimbus immortal beasts roared and stopped the Nimbus immortal beasts from splitting up. As a result, the 5 Nimbus immortal beasts turned their wings and flew towards Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu. Xiaohua's figure landed on the ground without a trace of stagnation. He flew toward the gate of the heaven's abode like flowing water. It was only a distance of a few hundred meters. In the past, he could cover it with just a few steps. Now it was a matter of life and death. Boom! Xiaohua had just flown halfway when he heard a roar behind him. Xiaohua panicked. Damn it, aren't these Nimbus immortal beasts too powerful? Sure enough, when he looked back, Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu were already tumbling in the air and flying toward the palace gate. At this time, Xiaohua himself had not reached the palace gate. Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu heard Xiaohua's words and immediately came to their senses. They threw Xiaohua aside and flew in the opposite direction of the palace gate. After flying for a while, the 5 Nimbus immortal beasts had already flown above their heads and their sharp claws slammed down. At this time, Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu had a tacit understanding and swapped their positions. The exchange between the two of them was easy, but the attack of the 5 Nimbus immortal beasts was not easy to distinguish. Ka-ka-ka! The wings of the 2 groups of Nimbus immortal beasts collided almost at the same time. In an instant, the 5 Nimbus immortal beasts pounced on each other again. Of course, this time, the Nimbus immortal beasts had learned their lesson. After swapping positions, they split up again and swung their tails at Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu. Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu had quietly retreated a little when the Nimbus immortal beasts were fighting. When they saw the huge tails sweeping toward them, they were overjoyed and activated their immortal artifacts to block them. Boom boom! 2 loud sounds rang out in succession. Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu were sent flying by the huge tails. Wasn't the direction of the heavens abode palace gate? Damn it! Although the 2 immortals seemed to be in a sorry state, they were about to crash into the heavens abode like meteors. Xiaohua was still thousands of feet away from the heavens abode palace. Then, he rolled his eyes and raised his hand to pick up the immortal artifact. He pushed against the ground and exerted force in his hand. Woo! His whole body flew straight for more than 100 feet and landed on the ground. Then, Xiaohua stumbled and ran for a few more feet. Once again, he pushed against the ground and his body flew again. After a few more times, and with Xiaohua's secret soul cultivation flying technique, he managed to chase Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu back. Rise! Seeing Xiaohua push himself up again, Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu understood. They stretched out their hands at the same time and grabbed Xiaohua's body with their immortal qi. Then, the 3 of them rushed through the gate of the heavens abode palace. At this time, the sharp claws of the flying crane immortal beast had already fallen. With a swoosh, Xiaohua's back was torn apart again. Woo! The 3 of them fell into the gate of the heavens abode palace. Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu let go of Xiaohua at the same time. Xiaohua's body drew an arc in the air and landed on the ground of the main hall. Amidst the whistling of the wind, there was a series of clattering sounds. Xiaohua's slightly clumsy body smashed the corpses on the ground into a mess. Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu also staggered to the ground. Not only were their faces abnormally pale, but there were also some drops of sweat dripping from their foreheads and necks. Fairy Xingyu stood on the ground and wiped her forehead with her hand. Looking at the sweat, she smiled bitterly and said, "Is this sweat? I can't remember the last time I sweated." Chapter 45-20. Su Ji ignored Fairy Xingyu. He released his thought extending and scanned the ground. When his thought extending landed on a corpse, he hurried over and picked up a box-like fairy weapon from the corpse. As his thought extending passed, he took out a thumb-sized elixir. However, he just looked at it, then threw it on the ground and said, Although these elixirs are useful, we can't take them. What a pity. Su Ji, take this first. Fairy Xingyu smiled, took out a jade bottle, and threw it to Su Ji. Su Ji was slightly stunned. He took the jade bottle with a wry smile, took out a blue elixir, and swallowed it. Then, he sat cross-legged on the ground and adjusted his breathing. Fairy Xingyu looked at Xiaohua, took out another jade bottle and swallowed it. Then she looked at Xiaohua and asked, Xiaohua, these elixirs I refined are not suitable for you. Your injuries seem to be superficial. As long as you get out of this space fragment, you should be able to heal yourself, right? Senior, you're right. Xiaohua nodded. I don't need to waste elixirs. This junior will stand guard for the seniors. No need. It's safe in the Heaven Mansion now. Fairy Xingyu said with a smile, those Nimbus immortal beasts don't dare to enter. You should rest for a while. We'll discuss. Unfortunately, before Fairy Xingyu could finish speaking, another roar of the Nimbus immortal beasts came from outside the door. Then, a gust of wind and flames rushed in from outside the door. The smaller Nimbus immortal beast was the first to rush in. How is that possible? Startled, Fairy Xingyu cried out, if these flying jade immortal beasts could rush into the Heaven Mansion, the Heaven Mansion would have been in a mess. Now, there are no traces of the Nimbus immortal beasts coming in and out of the Heaven Mansion. They obviously don't dare to come in. Maybe they couldn't before. Su Ji suddenly opened his eyes, glanced at the Nimbus immortal beasts rushing in, and said, they didn't even dare to get close to the Heaven Mansion. But I'm afraid they don't have any scruples. The Heaven Mansion is going to suffer. Hiss. Although Su Ji said Yi Qiong Heavenly Prefecture, Fairy Xingyu knew what he meant. When the three of them arrived at the Yi Qiong Heavenly Prefecture, the entire Heavenly Prefecture did not show any signs of being destroyed by the flying crane immortal beast. Clearly, the aura of the corpses of the two celestial venerables had forced them to stay away. Now that they had collected the corpses of the two celestial venerables, the aura of the two celestial venerables had disappeared. Naturally, the phalanx immortal beasts could approach the Immortal Mansion without fear. Although there was a restriction around the Immortal Mansion, it was limited to the surroundings. They didn't know how to activate the restriction in front of the door, so the phalanx immortal beasts could enter the Immortal Mansion. Motherfucker! Even this so-called heavenly abode can't stop the flying kite immortal beast. Are we all going to die here? This shard of the celestial realm is really killing me. Xiaohua was even more shocked, and he cursed furiously in his heart. But he didn't dare dally, and he waved his immortal artifact to greet them while he said, Senior, quickly heal your injuries. I'll obstruct them for a while. Get out of the way. How could Su Ji still care about healing? He hurriedly got up and shouted, Xiaohua, you're no match for them. As he spoke, Su Ji raised his hand and grabbed. A shadow condensed from lightning had already passed through his hand and landed on the flying kite immortal beast. Whoosh! How could the flying kite immortal beast be afraid of this shadow? It opened its mouth and spat out a crimson pillar of fire, which collided with the palm shadow. With a boom, the pillar of fire was annihilated, and the shadow also disappeared. That powerful airflow almost flipped Xiaohua over. Ah wow! At this time, behind the flying kite immortal beast, another flying kite immortal beast was obviously bigger. It seemed to be another group. Xingyue? Su Ji raised his head and looked around, then shouted, let's split up and rush into the heavenly abode to see if there's a restriction to avoid the flying kite immortal beast. But Fairy Xingyue hesitated for a moment, then her figure flashed and flew in another direction. Senior. Seeing that Su Ji was coming to save him, Xiaohua hurriedly shouted, although I don't have any magic power, I know the art of fighting. The main hall of the heavenly abode is not like the outside. There are pillars, corridors, and other obstacles. Although the flying kite immortal beast is powerful, it may not be able to do anything to me. Senior, you'd better hurry to the depths of the heavenly abode to find a way to kill the flying kite immortal beast. Now, there are only 5 flying kite immortal beasts. We can still deal with them. If a few more come, we'll really die without a burial place. As he spoke, Xiaohua waved his celestial artifact again, and his figure jumped into the distance. His figure was quite agile, and he was hiding behind a huge pillar. Ah wow! At this time, the flying kite immortal beast had already stretched out its sharp claws to grab Suji. The other flying kite immortal beast flapped its wings and flew toward Fairy Xingyue. Okay. Suji thought for a moment, then quickly retreated and shouted, "Be careful! I remember that there is a smaller hall in the depths of the heavenly abode. Go in and hide first." Crack! Just as Suji finished speaking, the flying kite immortal beast's sharp claws had already clawed down. As Suji dodged, the floor of the main hall was already cracked by the flying kite immortal beast's claws. Suji looked at the entrance of the hall again, and then he flicked his finger, causing a ball of lightning to shoot out. Rumble. A huge tremor resounded, and it drew the attention of the flying crane immortal beast that was charging over from Xiaohua, and then it urged its figure to charge towards the other side of the hall. Seeing that Suji and Fairy Xingyue had lured the three flying kite immortal beasts away, Xiaohua did not dare to be negligent. With a sweep of his mind, he put his celestial artifact into the space, and then used his soul cultivation flying technique to fly in another direction. As Xiaohua flew, he muttered in his heart, "Seniors, don't blame me for hiding it. This is a matter of life and death. If I reveal a bit of my divine ability in front of you, I will be hunted down even if I ascend to the immortal world in the future." Just as Xiaohua approached a huge pillar, his body fell rapidly and landed on the ground. Then, he activated his soul power, and his entire body slowly straightened and changed into a square shape. This was the transformation technique that Xiaohua had comprehended from Qingqiu Mountain in the star-picking deck. Although this soul power was not as useful as Daoist ecdermic powers, Xiaohua's human appearance still changed a little. Xiaohua had just landed when the flying kite immortal beast's cries rang out behind the stone pillar. The last two flying kite immortal beasts also rushed into the main hall. One of them chased after Fairy Xingyue, while the other pounced on Xiaohua. However, after the flying kite immortal beast landed, Xiaohua's shadow was nowhere to be seen. The flying kite immortal beast's 3 legs moved step by step beside the huge pillar, and a powerful responding force swept across the ground inch by inch. The loud footsteps caused the entire hall to shake. Damn it! Xiaohua retracted his aura, leaving only a wisp of his consciousness outside. However, this wisp of consciousness swayed like withered grass in front of the valiant Yin Yan. Xiaohua could not help but curse angrily again. This young master has always been extremely lucky. Why is it that after arriving at the Star Moon Palace, my luck has become a complete mess? As if it had discovered something, the flying crane immortal beast approached the huge pillar with large strides. Its beak that was as hard as a crane's beak also slowly approached Xiaohua. An extremely fishy smell that carried an indescribable heat pressed toward Xiaohua. Admittedly, Xiaohua had already transformed and sealed off his 5 senses. However, the aura that was mixed with the echoing will still forced its way into Xiaohua's mind, mouth, and nose in waves. A feeling of being targeted involuntarily arose from the bottom of Xiaohua's heart. In an instant, Xiaohua felt a sense of regret. He had been too smart for his own good. If he had escaped earlier, the flying kite immortal beast would only have chased after him. At this moment, he was completely exposed to the flying kite immortal beast's attack range. If the flying kite immortal beast sensed that something was wrong and immediately attacked, it would be too late even if he summoned Daoist, Witch, Celestial Being, and the others from the space. Piv. At this moment, the flying kite immortal beast's sharp beak landed on Xiaohua's back. The heat almost melted Xiaohua's body. Xiaohua clenched his teeth and tried his best to endure the unspeakable pain. Fortunately, the flying kite immortal beast was only suspicious. After probing for a moment, its sharp beak left again. Boom! It landed on the corpse of an immortal general not far away and shattered the armor. The immortal general's corpse also turned into nothingness in a ball of crimson fire. Ah wow! The flying kite immortal beast took a few steps forward. As if it was angry, it roared at the sky and swept its tail horizontally. Boom! It hit the huge pillar. The pillar shook a few times, but it didn't fall. Boom, boom, boom. The flying kite immortal beast seemed to be venting its anger. It slammed into the pillar several times. Boom. The entire pillar finally collapsed. The roof of the palace that was already tilted fell again. Crash. The huge rocks engraved with runes had lost their restrictive power. They fell one after another like rain. They hit Xiaohua and the flying kite immortal beast. Immediately after, the flying kite immortal beast let out a few hurried cries as if it was very happy. It spread its wings and flew in another direction. In just a short moment, the entire hall returned to a state of tranquility that had lasted for countless years. However, Xiaohua didn't move. He also didn't release his soul remembrance or consciousness. He was waiting for the flying kite immortal beast to return. After half a cup of tea's time, the entire palace didn't have any abnormalities. Xiaohua released his soul remembrance and looked for a moment. Then he raised his hand and pushed away the rocks that fell on him. Then he didn't even look and flew into the distance. After flying past a few palaces, there were no more sounds. Xiaohua stopped again. He looked around and found a platform to sit down. He thought to himself, "Damn it, it's too dangerous. The immortal realm is indeed not a place for people to stay. Right now, not to mention sneaking into the immortal realm through the passage of the Star Moon Palace, even if the immortal realm's heavenly venerables invited me with 8 palanquins, I wouldn't go. I must cultivate my strength. Through ascension, I must temper my body in the spirit cleansing pool before going. Without the immortal spirit body and immortal spirit chi, I can't even defeat an immortal beast. What's the point of going to the immortal realm?" Chapter 45-21. After resting for a while, Xiaohua looked at the mess in the hall and smiled again. Hee, I didn't dare to plunder at will outside Heaven's mansion for fear that Fairy Xingyu would see through it. Now that the flying jade immortal beast has entered Heaven's mansion, I'm afraid that the entire Heaven's mansion will be ruined by these beasts. Instead of that, it's better to let me take advantage of it. Thinking of this, Xiaohua released his mind. Whether it was the corpses, armor, immortal tools, storage bags, or the things in Heaven's mansion, they were all collected into the space like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. In just a moment, the entire hall was clean as if a dog had licked it. When the hall was clean, Xiaohua took out the wishful staff, looked around, and hit a giant pillar. Boom! The shaky roof of the hall fell, raising a burst of dust. Then, Xiaohua moved again, walking toward the depths of Heaven's mansion. Wherever he went, he swept away everything, and the halls collapsed one by one. As for Xiaohua's mind, he entered the space. When the figure of Jade Archive Xiaohua appeared, the figures of Daoist, Witch, Celestial Being, Demon Venerable Shi and others also appeared. Fellow Daoists. Jade Archive Xiaohua did not delay, and told the story of the matter to his avatars. He asked straightforwardly, "The situation is so urgent, do you have any good ideas?" "Big brother." Demon Venerable Shi shouted, "I have no problem. This immortal chi conflicts with my devil chi, but I can use my means here." "Forget it." Jade Archive Xiaohua's face was black. "Once the devil blade appears, there is no need to wait for me to fly to the immortal world. Su Ji's immortal thunder will kill me. He is the punishment envoy of the punishment palace. How can he allow a cultivator with devil chi to fly to the immortal world? In that case, I can only act secretly." Daoist Witch asked faintly. "Of course." Jade Archive Xiaohua replied without hesitation. "Fellow Daoist is now a taboo in the immortal world. Although I don't know the reason, we'd better not touch it." "I have no problem." Celestial Being said arrogantly, "The immortal chi in this space fragment has no effect on me." "Fellow Daoist, there's no problem." However, Jade Archive Xiaohua still shook his head and said, "However, without that white bone, fellow Daoist wouldn't be a match for this bullshit immortal beast. However, if we take out white bone, Fairy Xingyu is a law envoy. She has great insight and might see through our methods. TSK, I don't need to say more. The most precious thing in this space fragment has been taken by us. When she finds out that something is wrong, she will definitely look for me. Daoist Min smiled and said, "Since you can't do anything, my fellow Daoist, just keep hiding your true strength. Anyway, this heaven's abode seems to be of great importance." Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue don't want you to know the details. You might as well pretend to be ignorant until the end. Playing dumb is a must. Jade Archive Xiaohua nodded. The problem now is how to escape. It's not a big problem if it's just the 5 of them. Daoist Min replied, "In this space fragment of the immortal realm, it seems that the power of law of the 3 continents has lost its effectiveness. Fellow Daoist I and Heavenly Dao can resist the immortal beasts. If you use your divine ability, of course, you can resist them too. However, it's best to avoid Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue. However, if it's as you're worried, and there are more than 5 immortal beasts in this space fragment, then it'll be troublesome. We can only rely on the 2 immortals to find the place to escape from this space fragment first. Sigh, these 2 immortals are a little too arrogant." Daoist Wu sighed and said, "Or they have some scruples. Before entering the Star Moon Palace, they should have discussed it with you more." "That's normal." Daoist Min smiled and said, "Didn't we come to the Star Moon Palace with Xiong Yi, Yuanya, and the others? Should we have discussed it with them?" "That's true." Demon Venerable sure nodded. "I'm just afraid that Fairy Xingyue is hiding something that will be disadvantageous to you. Fairy Xingyue may have selfish motives, but Su Ji won't." Jade Archive Xiaohua shook his head. "As long as I'm with Su Ji, I don't have to worry about anything. The problem is that we're separated now. You have to be careful, big brother." Demon Venerable sure seemed to have a natural resistance to immortals and reminded him. "I know." Jade Archive Xiaohua nodded. "You wait for a while to discuss. I'll go out first." After saying that, Xiaohua's mind left the space. However, after a moment, Xiaohua's mind fell on the continent where the immortal artifacts were. Then, he raised his hand and a flying fork that was nearly 100 feet long landed in his hand. This flying fork was blue in color. When it landed in Jade Archive Xiaohua's hand, it still gave off a chill. Looking at the sharp tip of the flying fork, where pieces of ice appeared out of thin air, Jade Archive Xiaohua smiled and said, "This immortal artifact is of the ice attribute, which is the nemesis of the immortal beasts. We'll rely on this to kill the immortal beasts. Unfortunately, even if I use all my magic power, I'm afraid I won't be able to pierce through the scales of the immortal beasts. I can only rely on Su Ji for this. However, Su Ji's divine ability hasn't recovered yet, so he probably won't be able to fully activate this immortal artifact. I still have to add some materials." After thinking for a while, Jade Archive Xiaohua raised his hand and several drops of Xiantian true water floated into the air. As Jade Archive Xiaohua raised his hand and grabbed, the Xiantian true water fell into the spikes of the flying fork. After finishing his preparations, Jade Archive Xiaohua left the space again. However, he didn't bring the flying fork out of the space. He casually knocked over another stone pillar and the entire palace collapsed. Xiaohua stepped into a collapsed palace. The roof of this palace was long gone. The broken pillars, some huge rocks, and the jade table all fell into the dust. Xiaohua looked around. His mind was like quicksilver as he put the jade table, pearls, and other things into the space. Then he turned around and looked outside the palace. Outside the palace was an even more spacious courtyard. There were many immortal herbs and immortal trees that Xiaohua didn't recognize. Moreover, because the restrictions of the heavenly abode were damaged during the battle, these immortal trees and immortal herbs weren't protected by any restrictions at all. They looked as if they could be picked by anyone. Seeing this, Xiaohua's eyes lit up. He flew in front of a stalk of immortal grass. Just as he was about to reach out and grab it, he thought for a moment and stopped. After thinking for a bit, his mind entered the space again. When he came out, Xiaogua also came out. Xiaogua's body in the immortal spiritual energy was as he expected. Her spirit body wasn't affected by the immortal spiritual energy and didn't have any special discomfort. Xiaohua was overjoyed and said in a low voice, "Xiaogua, I'll leave this place to... Xiaohua, what's wrong? Could it be that you can't stay in this space for a long time? No. Xiaohua's small body trembled like a sieve. His red face was now as white as snow. His eyes flickered with extreme fear as he looked at the top of Xiaohua's head behind his back, stuttering as he spoke. Seeing this, Xiaohua's heart tightened even though he didn't have any warning signs in his heart. His mind wrapped around Xiaohua and he desperately urged his soul power. His body didn't move at all as he flew into the distance. Woo! Xiaohua's body had just moved when a gust of wind appeared behind Xiaohua. 3 scarlet-red claws of the flying crane immortal beast stretched out from the void and directly fell on Xiaohua's back. Boom! Xiaohua was indeed quick to react and left a string of afterimages in the air. However, one of the kite immortal beast's sharp claws still landed on his back. Amidst the sound, Xiaohua's back was torn apart and his muscles were torn apart. The other 2 claws even scratched the ground and created a crack that was several meters long. At this moment, the kite immortal beast that was hidden in the void finally revealed itself and landed heavily on the ground. Damn it! Xiaohua narrowly escaped a calamity. The sharp pain in his back pierced his heart. He angrily cursed. He knew in his heart that it was definitely him who pushed down the palace and attracted the flying crane immortal beast's attention. The flying crane immortal beast was lying in ambush in the void in advance, waiting for him to fall into its trap. If he didn't see the courtyard filled with immortal herbs and had the sudden idea to come out from the collapsed palace, he would have already been killed by the flying crane immortal beast. Looking at the flying crane immortal beast again, after its attack missed, it swept its huge tail again. At the same time, several immortal trees were broken and the space was torn apart. Xiaohua didn't have time to put Xiaohua into the space. He casually threw her to the ground and clenched his fists. Woo! He faced the flying crane immortal beast head-on. Poo-pew! First, there were 2 muffled sounds. Xiaohua's fists had hit the flying crane immortal beast's tail. At the same time, boom boom boom. A series of explosions sounded. Xiaohua's body was hit by the flying crane immortal beast's tail and flew horizontally like a meteor. In an instant, he pierced through more than 10 stone walls and disappeared after raising a cloud of dust. Oh! The flying crane immortal beast roared loudly. It seemed to be excited. It flapped its wings and its huge body also moved. It followed Xiaohua's direction and pounced. Everywhere the flying crane immortal beast passed, more than 10 stone walls were completely destroyed by the flying crane immortal beast. That continuous palace once again collapsed with a loud bang. Whoosh! Not only that, the flying crane immortal beast rushed out 100 feet and opened its mouth again. A crimson pillar of fire shot out from the cave that Xiaohua had pierced through. The stone walls and pillars all melted and disappeared in this pillar of fire. While the flying crane immortal beast was frantically attacking, it heard Xiaohua's roar. Suddenly, he rushed out from behind a stone pillar and waved the wishful steel staff in his hand. Boom! It smashed into the flying crane immortal beast's claws. In the huge roar, the flying crane immortal beast's claws trembled slightly. A layer of marks on it suddenly flashed with red light. A great impact force was generated. Not only did it block Xiaohua's wishful steel staff, but the remaining force was not exhausted. Xiaohua's figure was sent flying upside down in midair. Shua! The flying crane immortal beast waved its claws very fiercely. Without waiting for Xiaohua to fly more than 10 feet, it hit Xiaohua's chest again. Xiaohua's body collapsed and his whole figure was once again sent flying like gravel. Chapter 45-22. Roar! The flying crane immortal beast's figure flashed, leaving behind a string of afterimages as it chased after Xiaohua. This time, its tail pierced towards Xiaohua's chest from the bottom. At the tip of the tail, a sharp cone-like protrusion flashed with red light. Even the space was about to be burned into fragments by the red light. Although Xiaohua's figure was unbalanced in the air, his expression changed greatly when he saw the flying crane immortal beast's tail piercing towards him. His entire body curled up in the air, and a vortex of afterimages bloomed in the air. The flying crane immortal beast's tail pierced into one of the vortexes. Whoosh! At the same time, Xiaohua's figure appeared in another place. He did not stop at all, and like flowing water he rushed into the flying crane immortal beast's body. Without waiting for the flying crane immortal beast's sharp claws to attack, Xiaohua had already landed on the flying crane immortal beast's body. With a shake of his hand, the immortal tool that condensed the innate primordial water was already in his hand. He raised his arm and was about to stab it into the flying crane immortal beast's back. At this moment, the markings on the flying crane immortal beast's scales lit up, and the fur or feathers between the scales began to move. This movement was very strange. It was like the beating of a drum, and the space around Xiaohua was trembling. Not good. Seeing the powerful fluctuations in the space, how could Xiaohua care about killing the flying crane immortal beast? He growled and hurriedly urged his soul power to escape from the flying crane immortal beast's body. Boom! Just as Xiaohua left, tens of thousands of flames flew out from the void and connected with the red light on the flying crane immortal beast's scales. A sea of fire enveloped the surrounding space of a few hundred feet. Damn it! Xiaohua had already used the fire origin to temper his body, but when he touched the fire of the immortal realm, his body showed signs of melting. It seemed like he did not dare to take the risk. Xiaohua cursed and crashed into the damaged palace. How could the flying crane immortal beast let Xiaohua go? It roared and also crashed into the palace. The palaces of the heavenly abode collapsed one after another, like an earth dragon rolling under the ground. Translator, Atlas Studios editor. Atlas Studios Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu were also chased to the left by the gallium immortal beast. Hearing the collapsing stone walls, Su Ji's expression changed and he transmitted his voice. Xingyue, quick! Xiaohua is being chased by the gallium immortal beast. Alright. Fairy Xingyu scanned the area with her mind and saw that there were two celestial phalanx beasts behind Su Ji. She knew that Xiaohua was also targeted by the celestial phalanx beasts. She did not dare to be careless. With a flash, she crossed the courtyard outside the hall and was about to rush over. However, just as she passed by, she suddenly frowned and her gaze fell on the ground. However, she only glanced at it for a moment before the fire pillar behind her attacked her. Fairy Xingyue had no choice but to dodge it. On the other side of the hall, Su Ji's body was also flickering with silver light and lightning as he quickly rushed over. However, when Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue rushed into the main hall and saw the situation inside, they couldn't help but gasp. Their hearts were completely cold. At this time, Xiaohua had been smashed into the stone wall by the flying crane immortal beast with its tail. Half of his body was embedded in the wall. Except for the huge flying fork in his left arm, which could still move, the rest of his body was riddled with injuries. Damn it! Su Ji was shocked and did not hesitate to activate his immortal qi. However, even if an immortal had arrived, it was already too late. The flying crane immortal beast turned its head slightly and glanced at Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu. It opened its mouth and tried to devour Xiaohua. However, the entire space in front of Xiaohua was distorted. The stone wall where Xiaohua was located shook violently. Everything was covered by the devouring power of the flying crane immortal beast. Xiaohua's hands and feet were also swaying in the wind like withered branches. At this moment, Xiaohua suddenly moved. He waved the flying fork in his left hand, and the huge flying fork flew into the flying crane immortal beast's mouth faster than a meteor. Unsurprisingly, the flying fork fell into the flying crane immortal beast's mouth along with some gravel. As soon as the flying fork fell in, the flying crane immortal beast was shocked, as if it had sensed something. Without any hesitation, the phalanx immortal beast let out a deep roar as a crimson flame burst out of its mouth. It would have been fine if the flame had not been born. As soon as it was born, a huge explosion came from the flying crane immortal beast's body. Moreover, this explosion sounded like firecrackers, from its slender neck to its tail. Following this explosion, the flying crane immortal beast's neck exploded, and its body exploded. Even its tail exploded. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. The flying crane immortal beast, which even an immortal could not kill, turned into blood clots just like that. How is this possible? Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu were not the only ones who were stunned on the spot. They looked at Xiao Hua, who seemed to be on the verge of death, in disbelief. Even the 4 flying crane immortal beasts stopped in midair, not knowing what to do. However, in just a moment, the blood chi on the flying crane immortal beast's corpse aroused the bestial nature of the 4 flying crane immortal beasts. The flying crane immortal beasts roared and pounced on Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu again. Rumble! Su Ji urged the lightning to fight with the flying crane immortal beast. Fairy Xingyu also waved the star saber and the moon saber to resist. For a moment, there was chaos and no one paid attention to Xiao Hua. Damn it, I finally found the flying crane immortal beast's weakness. Xiao Hua could have escaped, but at this time, he was indeed a little weak and numb, so he simply hid on the stone wall and pretended to be dead. His mind had already entered the space. On one hand, he was looking for an ice-type immortal weapon, and on the other, he was refining the innate primordial water to the sharp points of the immortal weapons. After refining the 4 immortal weapons, Xiao Hua naturally couldn't give them to Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu in front of them. He just threw the 4 immortal weapons far away, waiting for an opportunity to remind them. Just as Xiao Hua was thinking about how to open his mouth, the 4 flying jade immortal beasts suddenly stopped. Then, they raised their heads and looked towards a certain direction at the same time. Finally, they let out a few cries in unison and spread their wings. They actually abandoned Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu and broke through the roof of the heavenly abode. They flew into the sky and disappeared in a moment. Phew! Xiao Hua let out a long breath, feeling as if he had just survived a disaster. As Su Ji rushed into the sky, he released his spiritual sense to investigate and ordered Fairy Xingyu to rescue Xiao Hua. Fairy Xingyu pulled Xiao Hua out of the stone wall. Xiao Hua took the opportunity to fall to the ground like a pile of mud. He looked at Fairy Xingyu and said, "Elder sister, you'd better not save me. Let me die. This space fragment is already so dangerous. Even the immortal beasts in your immortal realm are so powerful. How can we go to the other space fragments?" Fairy Xingyu also put away her previous smile and nodded. "You're right. This space fragment is really too strange. This star-moon palace is also different from what we thought before. Then we should retreat first and go to the other space fragments. Can't we?" Xiao Hua suggested. "Instead of retreating, it's better to go forward." Fairy Xingyu answered without hesitation. At this time, Su Ji landed and said in disbelief, "These flying crane immortal beasts really left. It's really strange." "There's nothing strange about it," Fairy Xingyu replied. "There are only 2 possibilities. First, there are not only 5 flying crane immortal beasts in this space fragment, but also other flying crane immortal beasts in groups. And this possibility is very high. I remember that flying crane immortal beasts always appear in groups. Second, the 4 great families and the great demons of the demon clan have also stepped into this space fragment. They have many people and are weak. Naturally, they will be easily discovered by the flying crane immortal beasts. No matter what the possibility is, now that the flying crane immortal beasts have indeed left, we should quickly find the location of this space fragment," Xiao Hua urged. Hearing this, Su Ji looked at Fairy Xingyu. Fairy Xingyu smiled bitterly and said, "The space fragment and the meteor belt seem to be opposite from each other from the outside. However, inside the space fragment, these 2 positions don't necessarily have to be opposite. And no one knows where this position is. Sometimes it's at the top of a mountain, sometimes it's at the seaside, and sometimes it's in a cave. However, this place usually has the power of the stars and moon seeping out. I can use the star shuttle to find the approximate location. Big sister, hurry up and activate it." Thinking of how Fairy Xingyu did not say anything after entering the space fragment, and how she was not in a hurry, Xiao Hua could not help but feel a little anxious and urged her. "When I entered the space fragment, I already activated the star shuttle." Fairy Xingyu smiled bitterly and said, "But at that time, I didn't find the location of the exit." You activated the star shuttle at that time to find the exit? Xiaohua was dumbfounded. Although he was confused by Fairy Xingyu's smile at that time, he still had some impression of it. He thought that Fairy Xingyu was just testing the immortal qi in the space fragment. He did not expect that she was looking for the exit. Fairy Xingyu glared at Xiaohua and said, "Then what did you think I was doing? The immortal qi in Su Ji's and my body is very precious. How could I use it casually?" "Big sister, what about now?" Xiaohua asked again. "The situation is urgent now. No matter how precious the immortal qi is, you have to activate it." "Do you think I don't want to activate the star shuttle? I want to activate it too," Fairy Xingyu said helplessly, "but the immortal qi used to activate the star shuttle to find the exit is far from what is used to attack. I can't activate a large amount of immortal qi at this time, or my body will collapse." Alas, okay. Xiaohua had already seen some blood flowing under Su Ji's armor. He knew that what Fairy Xingyu said was true. He sighed and said, "Senior, quickly take some pills to heal your injuries." "Okay." Fairy Xingyu nodded and took another pill. After she sat down, Su Ji looked at the ruins around him and said, "You two rest here. Be careful and hide yourselves. I'll go outside to explore and see what's going on with the Gallium immortal beasts. If it's a group of Gallium immortal beasts, we have to plan early." Chapter 45-23. Su Ji, I'll go with you. When Fairy Xingyu heard this, she could no longer sit still. She hurriedly stood up and said, "I'm worried if you go alone. I can avoid the flying crane immortal beast without using my immortal qi. You'd better cultivate here." Of course, Su Ji didn't want Fairy Xingyu to follow him. Fairy Xingyu said again, "I don't need to cultivate with my injuries. Moreover, your injuries are more serious than mine. Why don't you go with me? We can take care of each other. Besides, if the flying crane immortal beast comes, I won't be able to resist it. Oh, and if I go with you, I can also explore the exit to the meteor belt, right?" "But..." Su Ji looked at Xiaohua, who was lying on the ground, and said, "If we all leave, what will happen to Xiaohua? Didn't you see that he could kill the flying crane immortal beast?" "Oh, right, Xiaohua, how did you kill the flying crane immortal beast?" Fairy Xingyu suddenly remembered and hurriedly asked. Xiaohua was sweating profusely. He thought that Fairy Xingyu would ask this question first, but when they were about to leave, he remembered such an important matter. Xiaohua pretended not to frown and said, "It was just a coincidence. When I saw that the flying crane immortal beast was a fire-type immortal beast, I thought of killing it with a water-type immortal artifact. However, I couldn't take out my immortal artifact, so I simply looked around the hall for immortal artifacts. I couldn't use the ones that were too big, and I couldn't use the ones that needed immortal qi. I just happened to see an ice-type flying fork. The size was just right. I took it to protect myself. I also tried to use the flying fork to pierce the flying crane immortal beast's body, but I couldn't get close to the flying crane immortal beast. In the end, when the flying crane immortal beast was about to swallow me, I had a flash of inspiration and threw the flying fork into the flying crane immortal beast's mouth." Xiaohua shrugged when he spoke up to this point. However, the pain in his body caused him to frown again. He said with difficulty, "Senior, you saw it too. The flying kite immortal beast was accidentally killed by me just like that." "Well, fire and water are incompatible. I've also thought about using an ice attribute immortal artifact to kill the kite immortal beast." Su Ji nodded. "But the immortal artifact I found wasn't as powerful as Xiaohua's flying fork. It could only injure the flying crane immortal beasts and wasn't able to kill them. This junior found the flying fork there. Senior, do you have another look to see if there's anything suitable?" Xiaohua said as he pointed towards the distant main hall. Su Ji shook his head. "That won't be necessary." Fairy Xingyu stood up and said, "Let's take a look. Maybe there are some high-grade immortal artifacts." "Alright, go ahead and look for it." As he spoke, Su Ji looked around once more, and then he pointed towards the distance and said, "Xiaohua, there's a small hall over there. I presume the flying crane immortal beast is unable to enter. Alas, forget it, I'll take you there. As he spoke, Su Ji rolled up his sleeves and lifted Xiaohua into the air. Just as he was about to fly away, Fairy Xingyu, who was next to him, said in surprise, Su Ji, come and take a look. These celestial artifacts are all compatible. They are similar to the flying fork that Xiaohua mentioned. Su Ji didn't mind. He had already tried it before and felt that Xiaohua was just lucky. Now that he heard Fairy Xingyu mention it, he said, take them first. I'll send Xiaohua over and then we'll go out and explore. But Fairy Xingyu put away the immortal artifacts that Xiaohua had sealed with innate primordial water and took a few more. Then she urged her figure to catch up with Su Ji. However, just as she was about to leave the main hall, she glanced at the courtyard again and whispered to herself, is there someone else in this heavenly mansion? But if there's someone else, why didn't I notice it? Maybe it's just an illusion? In just a moment, Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu both rushed out of the heavenly mansion and went far away. After half a cup of tea's time, Xiaohua flew out from the main hall while humming a little tune. He shouted loudly, Xiaohua, Master! Xiaohua was really frightened. Her face was still pale as she looked around, her eyes darting around. It's okay. That damn flying crane immortal beast has been killed by Master. Xiaohua said with a smile, hurry up and take these immortal herbs and immortal wood. There's still a fairy. Xiaohua hurriedly said, she seemed to have noticed me just now. Really? That's a little troublesome. Xiaohua frowned, but after a moment he smiled and said, don't worry about her. Just take them. Even if she found out, she could only be suspicious. Otherwise, she would have said that when she came back, she would push everything to the flying crane immortal beast. What does that have to do with us? Okay. Xiaohua was emboldened when she heard this. She handed a storage bag to Xiaohua and said, I just put this away. Master, take it first. I'll tidy it up when I get home. Xiaohua took it and put it into the space without looking at it. However, after a moment, he asked curiously, Xiaohua, can you use storage bags here? Yes, Master knows. This storage bag is not the same as the one Master uses. It was refined by Master Lei Ting using immortal wood. Xiaohua hurriedly answered. So that's how it is. Xiaohua laughed and waved his hand. You still have a lot of these things, right? Yes, Master. Xiaohua smiled and said, enough to take away all the immortal herbs and immortal wood in the main hall. Good. Xiaohua waved his hand heroically. Go ahead and do it. You and Master will work hard together. Move this heavenly mansion into our house and let our Fortune Gate disciples enjoy it. Yes, I understand. Xiaohua's face lit up when she heard that she could work hard together with Xiaohua. She was really excited. She slipped into the ground and disappeared. Then, Xiaohua saw that inside the courtyard, large patches of immortal herbs were disappearing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Since he had already made up his mind to empty the heavenly abode, Xiaohua no longer held back. Activating his soul power, he flew up and went along the side of the main hall. Wherever Xiaohua passed, the armors and immortal tools disappeared. The decorations and jades in the main hall also disappeared. Only broken corpses and collapsed stone walls were blown by the wind under the sunlight, as if they were howling in grief. The Night Dome Heavenly Mansion was really big. There were all kinds of halls in an endless line. Even inside the halls, there were often secret rooms. However, all these secrets were exposed after the entire Heavenly Mansion's restrictions were destroyed. Xiaohua released his soul force to the limit and didn't miss a single spot. His mind, which could even absorb the netherworld blood sea into the space, tirelessly searched the Heavenly Mansion. He didn't miss a single immortal tool. Even so, Xiaohua flew for more than 10 hours before he finished walking through the entire Heavenly Mansion. Finally, he completed his task and moved all the things in the Night Dome Heavenly Mansion into the space. Xiaohua was tired, but Xiaohua was even more tired than him. Xiaohua still had some misgivings. He didn't dare to take things that were too broken, and he didn't dare to take things that were too obvious. He was afraid that Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu would find flaws when they returned. Xiaohua, on the other hand, didn't have any misgivings. She took all the immortal herbs, immortal fruits, and immortal wood in the heavenly mansion into the space. Not a single one was left out. At this time, Xiaogua had already returned to the space. She looked at the immortal fruits and immortal herbs with some worry. She could clearly feel that the heaven and earth origin energy of Shenhua continent was very different from the immortal spirit energy in the space fragment. She couldn't guarantee that these immortal herbs would survive well after being planted. Maybe the aura of that medicinal pill. Xiaogua suddenly thought of the mysterious medicinal pill that had appeared in the space before. That medicinal pill had disappeared from Shenhua continent ever since Xiaohua's space evolved. Naturally, Xiaogua hadn't seen it for a long time. However, she had already obtained a lot of alchemy techniques from that medicinal pill. Xiaogua hadn't completely mastered the alchemy techniques yet. At this time, when Xiaogua saw these immortal woods, she naturally associated them with the aura of the mysterious gold core. Xiaohuan naturally didn't know about Xiaogua's distress. He casually strolled around and finally arrived at a majestic hall. There were many things in this hall, but as soon as Xiaohua entered the hall, his gaze was immediately attracted to a throne in the hall. Although this throne seemed to have been split into two halves by a sword, it seemed to be hidden in the void and also seemed to be towering over the throne. A kind of unforgettable will emerged from this throne. This will was like the center of the heavenly palace, making Xiaohua feel that it was difficult to approach. When his gaze landed on it, it was as if he was looking at an incomparably huge mountain. Xiaohua had never seen immortal Emperor Go Chen's throne, nor had he seen Mahavairakana's 9-grade lotus platform. However, he had seen the dragon thrones of the dragon palaces of the 4 seas. Those 4 dragon thrones added together were probably not comparable to the jewel on this throne. Since even Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue could not get close to the throne, Xiaohua naturally could not. Xiaohua shifted his gaze away from the throne and looked at the plaque on the jade wall behind the throne. The plaque was already in tatters, and the dazzling words on it were not something Xiaohua could understand. When his gaze landed on it, the words had already turned into a dazzling color that did not form a word. Damn it, isn't it just a celestial venerable? How can you bully people like this? Look at the name of the heavenly mansion. What's there to be afraid of? It's not like I'll lose a single hair. Xiaohua curled his lips and muttered to himself, moreover, your entire heavenly mansion has been moved away by someone. Thinking about this, Xiaohua couldn't help but cover his mouth and laugh. Wasn't this person talking about himself? Then, Xiaohua decided to go all the way. He released his consciousness again and collected all the inconspicuous things in the hall. He believed that even if Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu came back, they might not be able to find anything. Xiaohua had absolute confidence in this aspect. After cleaning the hall, Xiaohua turned around and prepared to leave. However, just as he turned around, his gaze fell on the milky white plaque unwillingly. He pinched his chin, and there was a little embarrassment in his eyes. It seemed that he was angry because he couldn't move the entire hall away. After a while, Xiaohua raised his right hand and pointed his thumb between his eyebrows. He whispered, "Open." A dark green brilliance flashed between his eyebrows, and the delusion breaker Dharma eye opened. Then, Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air. Hiss. Chapter 45-24. Through the delirium breaker Dharma eye, Xiaohua saw a layer of dazzling brilliance on the huge throne. A light shadow that looked like a huge hammer that had been split in half was faintly flashing in the void. The halo pierced the Dharma eye like a golden needle, causing Xiaohua's Dharma eye to feel pain. He couldn't help but sigh. This throne is really powerful. However, before Xiaohua could raise his Dharma eye to look at the words on the plaque, he was suddenly stunned again. He stood there in disbelief and then hurriedly closed his Dharma eye. When the soreness in his Dharma eye slowly disappeared, he took a few steps forward, wanting to get closer to the throne. Unfortunately, he only took 2 steps before the invisible aura of the throne blocked him. Xiaohua walked around the throne again, but he still couldn't get close to it. When he reached the side of the hall, Xiaohua opened his Dharma eye again. Sure enough, at the bottom of the throne that looked like a hammer, A golden square light shadow the size of a fist appeared in his eyes. This light shadow was like a candle flame in the wind, flattened and swaying for a while. Most of the time, it was covered by the light of the throne. If not for the delirium breaker Dharma eye, he definitely wouldn't have been able to see it. Imperial Jade Seal? Golden Seal? Seeing the light shadow instantly fill up and become a square body, Xiaohua suddenly came to his senses and thought of the Imperial Jade Seal and Golden Seal he had obtained from the two corpses. Damn it! Xiaohua was a little hesitant. After all, so much time had passed. Su Ji and Fairy Xing could come back at any time. Moreover, if he took out the Imperial Jade Seal and Golden Seal, who knew what kind of aura or abnormality there would be? If he accidentally fell into the trap, wouldn't everything before be for naught? I'd better go. Xiaohua thought for a moment and said to himself, this is the Yi Qiong heavenly abode. Although Fairy Xingyu and Suji didn't say which big shot lived here, looking at the extravagance of this heavenly abode, it's not an ordinary immortal. Better. Thoughts were just thoughts. If the money grubber Xiaohua stopped now, he wouldn't be Xiaohua. After hesitating for a moment, Xiaohua observed the light shadow again. Fortunately, there were still some differences between the Imperial Jade Seal and the Golden Seal. In a moment, Xiaohua already knew that the owner of the Imperial Jade Seal was the owner of this heavenly abode. Therefore, Xiaohua first released his soul sense to check if there were any strange movements nearby, then hurriedly took out the Imperial Jade Seal. As soon as the Imperial Jade Seal appeared, it immediately emitted a milky white halo. This halo also took the shape of a hammer. Xiaohua held the Imperial Jade Seal, and the halo blocked the aura of the throne. Xiaohua effortlessly walked to the front of the throne. The shadow of the Imperial Jade Seal was below the throne. Although the throne was split into two, Xiaohua was still unable to move the throne away. Xiaohua released his consciousness. The entire throne was heavier than a mountain, and he couldn't collect it. Xiaohua looked again. The right hand of the throne was on a square shelf. Xiaohua did not hesitate to place the Imperial Jade Seal on the shelf. Shwa! As the Imperial Jade Seal fell, a milky white brilliance immediately emerged from the throne, spreading all around the heavenly abode. Although Xiaohua couldn't see it clearly, he could sense that layers upon layers of profound restrictions were slowly being activated, and the entire heavenly abode began to slowly shake. Motherfucker! Xiaohua panicked and shouted, I didn't want to activate the restrictions of the heavenly abode. With this, no matter how stupid Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu are, they will know that I did something. Helpless, Xiaohua hurriedly released his consciousness to put the throne back into the space. Unfortunately, the throne was still as steady as a mountain, not moving at all. Xiaohua was helpless. He hastily picked up the Imperial Jade Seal again. Strangely, when he picked up the Imperial Jade Seal again, swoosh! The Imperial Jade Seal glowed brilliantly and landed on the throne. The enormous throne immediately transformed into a ray of light and shadow. Following Xiaohua's silent chant, receive, 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 it fell into the Imperial Jade Seal. With the throne gone, only an empty space was left. Naturally, the naked eye still couldn't see the shadow of the Imperial Jade Seal. Xiaohua opened his delirium eyes and looked at the shadow, waiting for the shadow to fill up into the shape of the Imperial Jade Seal again. At the same time, he was burning with anxiety. His soul sense swept the surroundings of the heavenly abode, fearing that Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu would return at this time. In just half a cup of tea's time, in Xiaohua's eyes, a day passed like a year. Seeing the shadow gradually take shape, Xiaohua didn't hesitate to put the Imperial Jade Seal in the shadow. Boom! At the place where the Imperial Jade Seal landed, the light and shadows suddenly exploded. It was as if a huge hammer had filled the entire hall. Xiaohua's law eye seemed to have been pierced by a sharp sword. A burst of intense pain came, causing him to hastily close his eyes. When he opened his eyes, he saw a bright light like the scorching sun in front of him. Layers of brilliance shone out from a door in front of him. Under the brilliance of this light, his body became transparent. Since he had already reached this point and made such a big movement, Xiaohua didn't have time to regret it. He stepped into the door. Heavens! Xiaohua, who had always expressed his surprise with "holy shit," actually shouted, "Holy shit," now. These two words were enough to express his feelings. Because just inside this door, there was another huge space. Inside the space, there were many armors, immortal weapons, war chariots, and other things neatly arranged. Moreover, in places that were almost impossible to see, there were even more things that Xiaohua didn't recognize at all. At this time, other than shock, Xiaohua only had one thought: holy shit, before? I really worked for nothing. More than dozens of hours of work, I might as well have found this space. The ancients said it well: as long as the direction is right, the sweat won't be in vain. The ancients really didn't deceive me. At this time, ka. A sound like glass cracking came from the top of Xiaohua's head. Xiaohua hurriedly looked up and saw that outside the milky white space, layers of dragon-like cracks flashed from time to time. And in these cracks, Xiaohua was very familiar with the fluctuations of space collapsing violently rushed in. Not good. Xiaohua immediately thought of the annihilation of space when he met the first Tian Xin in the Dawn Rain continent. This space itself is inside the Heavenly Palace, and the fragment of the Immortal Realm where the Heavenly Palace is located is separated from the Immortal Realm. Now that it has fallen into the meteor belt, this space naturally can't exist forever. If this Xiao didn't happen to come in today, I'm afraid that after this space was annihilated, everything inside would no longer exist. Collect. Xiaohua saw that there wasn't much time left and hurriedly released his mind to collect the things inside the space. However, when Xiaohua's mind looked again, this space seemed to be limitless, but his mind was already unable to keep up with the speed of the space collapsing. He saw that a corner of the space had already collapsed. Imperial Jade Seal. Xiaohua's mind was blessed. He hurriedly waved his hand and the Imperial Jade Seal floating not far away fell into his hand. Collect. Xiaohua almost couldn't wait to shout loudly. Shua! The Imperial Jade Seal didn't disappoint Xiaohua. A brilliance fell into the space. When the brilliance disappeared, the space was already completely empty. Awesome! Xiaohua slapped his thigh and hurriedly sent his mind to collect the Imperial Jade Seal back into the space. Only then did he feel completely relieved. Rumble! At this time, the space above Xiaohua's head had already collapsed, letting out a thunderous sound. However, the space collapse this time was different from before. After the space vortex, there wasn't a chaotic void, but a starry sky. There were many space fragments in the starry sky, and these fragments were wantonly fluttering all the time. These fragments had a faint brilliance. Some were in the shape of strips, some were in the shape of squares, some were in the shape of 6 stars, and most of the fragments didn't have any fixed shape. For a while, they were in the shape of a circle, and for a while, they were in the shape of a sheet. Isn't this a meteor belt? Xiaohua was dumbfounded. However, in an instant, Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Obviously, the exit of the space fragment that Fairy Xingyu couldn't find with her star shuttle was here. It was the place that was blocked by the hidden space of the Heavenly Mansion. Su Ji had said clearly before that the exit of the space fragment could be anywhere in the space fragment. It could be at the top of a mountain, at the bottom of the sea, in the forest, or in the pavilion. And the exit of the Immortal Realm fragment was in the space that was suppressed by the throne. If Xiaohua hadn't taken the Heavenly Master's Imperial Jade Seal, if he hadn't taken the throne, and if he hadn't used the Imperial Jade Seal to open this hidden space, even if the hidden space that blocked the exit collapsed, the exit would still be suppressed by the throne. Even if Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu racked their brains, they wouldn't be able to find the exit of this space fragment. Seeing the meteor belt appear, Xiaohua's first reaction was to open his Delirium Dharma Eye. Although the Delirium Dharma Eye was in severe pain at this time, Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent when it concerned his life. A moment later, the space collapsed to the door. Kacha! With a cracking sound, the door cracked open. Xiaohua closed his Dharma Eye and flew out of the door. When he looked at the hall again, more than half of the jade wall with the plaque had fallen into the void, and the entire hall was still disappearing rapidly. Oh my hull! Xiaohua cried out involuntarily. He immediately released his consciousness and wantonly put everything in the hall into the space. At this time, seeing that the space collapse was about to swallow the entire heavenly palace, wasn't it a good time for Xiaohua to destroy the corpse and destroy the evidence? What other scruples did he have? Soon, the heavenly palace began to disappear from the center, and a meteor belt appeared clearly. However, the speed of the space collapse didn't slow down at all. Not only did it spread into the depths of the heavenly palace, it also spread out of the heavenly palace. Xiaohua's initial joy began to turn into fear. He released his soul consciousness and flew out of the heavenly palace. The aura of the space collapse began to rush out of the heavenly palace and spread throughout the entire space. Xiaohua flew out of the heavenly palace, flew up a high slope, and stood there quietly. His gaze fell on what seemed to be the location of the heavenly palace. At this time, the center of the heavenly palace had become an oval-shaped starry sky, and the surrounding edges were rapidly becoming transparent and disappearing. Moreover, this oval-shaped starry sky also extended in all directions, like a big mouth of starry sky, swallowing the space fragment. Chapter 45-25. Roar, roar, a burst of extremely chaotic cries came from afar. Clearly, the huge commotion in the heavenly palace had attracted the attention of the flying crane immortal beasts. Hearing the many cries, Xiaohua was already prepared in his heart, but when he turned around and saw thousands of flying crane immortal beasts, he was completely dumbfounded. How was this still the rhythm of letting people live? At this moment, a voice that sounded calm yet was filled with anxiety sounded out from in front of the group of flying crane immortal beasts. Xiaohua, quickly find a suitable spatial fragment. Xiaohua came back to his senses and looked over. He saw that in front of the ferocious flying dagger immortal beasts, there was actually a flying boat. Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue were standing on it. Behind the two of them, there were many figures. However, Xiaohua could hear Su Ji's voice clearly. Okay. Xiaohua responded and was about to fly up. His heart skipped a beat. He withdrew his soul power and ran down the mountain. Although he looked vigorous, he was still far from flying. Senior. Xiaohua acted very well. He raised his head and shouted, I can't fly. Come and pick me up. Of course, Xiaohua did not use his soul power when he shouted. As for whether Su Ji could hear him, only God knew. Su Ji could not hear what Xiaohua was saying, but he already understood when he saw Xiaohua dancing on the hillside. Su Ji turned to Fairy Xingyu and said, Xingyu, get ready to activate the star shuttle and find a suitable spatial fragment. Fairy Xingyu raised her hand and took out her star shuttle. However, when she was about to activate her immortal spiritual energy, she smiled bitterly and said in a low voice, I've already used up too much immortal spiritual energy when I fought the flying crane immortal beast earlier. I can't even activate the star shuttle now. Okay. Su Ji nodded. He looked up at the meteor belt in the distance and said, You can use your experience to find a spatial fragment to enter first. I'll go and save Xiaohua first. But Fairy Xingyu nodded. She looked down at the flying boat under her feet and said, With the Dongfang family's celestial imperial equipment, we will have some assurance when we enter the meteor belt. As long as there is no celestial kite beast in the space fragments that fall, there shouldn't be any problems. Dongfang Yushan? Su Ji did not say anything more to Fairy Xingyue. He turned his head and said to a Confucian cultivator standing respectfully in the distance, You will control the flying boat for me. This. Dongfang Yushan was a little hesitant. At this moment, the flying boat shook violently, and sparks appeared at the tail of the flying boat. It was the flying crane immortal beast's fire pillar that hit the flying boat. Junior's true chi is limited and my cultivation is shallow. It is difficult for me to control this imperial equipment. Dongfang Yushan no longer hesitated and said loudly, Moreover, there are so many immortal beasts chasing after the flying boat. If the flying boat is even a moment slower, we will all die. If I tell you to activate it, then activate it. Why are you spouting so much nonsense? Su Ji's tone was indifferent as he glanced at Dongfang Yushan. Dongfang Yushan's heart trembled. He hurriedly stepped forward and said, "Yes, I understand. I will ask Shimin Hingyue and the other disciples to come and help." "As you wish." Su Ji nodded. Then he released his thought and looked at Xiaohua. When Xiaohua saw the flying boat approaching, he raised his arms and waved them. At the same time, he pointed at the meteor belt. Su Ji curled his lips. He naturally understood that Xiaohua was indicating his importance and reminding him not to abandon him here. Su Ji turned his head to look at the approaching celestial kite beast, then looked down at the flying boat. He nodded at Fairy Xingyu. His whole body glowed with silver light again, and his figure turned into a thunderbolt and rushed down the flying boat. When Dongfang Yushan, Shimin Hingyue, and the other disciples of the four great families saw the silver light flashing on Su Ji's body and the immortal's pressure, there was not much surprise in their eyes. They only had one thought in their minds, and that was to report to their sects as soon as they returned from Star Moon Palace. On these 3 continents, there were immortals from the immortal world, and there was more than one immortal. Su Ji descended from the flying boat, turning into an arc in the sky as he flew towards Xiaohua. Seeing that he was still several hundred feet away, Su Ji raised his hand and made a grabbing motion. Kacha! A layer of blue lightning appeared in the void around Xiaohua. This lightning was like a giant hand, grabbing Xiaohua in an instant. Then, Su Ji's figure flashed, and he charged towards the sky again. In just a moment, the flying boat in the sky had already passed over Su Ji's head. Su Ji and Xiaohua were exposed in front of thousands of celestial kite beasts again. Aogg! The strange cries of the celestial kite beasts not only caused Su Ji's figure to sway slightly, but even Xiaohua's Naiwan palace was filled with sparks. Woo-woo! Following the cries of the celestial kite beasts, hundreds of fire pillars fell from the sky. Before the fire pillars could get close, the space where Xiaohua was already filled with an inexplicable sticky liquid. The space was about to collapse from the heat. Seeing this, Xiaohua's liver and gallbladder were torn apart. He knew in his heart that even if he used all his soul power at this time, he would not be able to escape from this large-scale attack. Roar! At this moment of life and death, he heard Su Ji's roar and the silver light around him shone brightly. Xiaohua felt a strong force in the air near him. Then the entire space was like a wave crashing toward him. His figure flashed and landed on the flying boat. Su Ji! Before Xiaohua could stabilize himself, Fairy Xingyu's voice sounded, her tone full of panic. It's okay. Although Su Ji's voice was weak, he was very calm. Because the flying boat was attacked by the celestial kite beasts one after another, the Confucian cultivators, who were flustered, immediately calmed down. Listen to Xiaohua. After Su Ji finished speaking, he took out a pill from his arms and put it in his mouth. He did not say anything else. Looking at the silver light again, he saw blood with black flesh flowing out. Xiaohua stood on the flying boat and stabilized himself slightly. He immediately said to Fairy Xingyu, "Senior, don't worry about the meteor belt. You go and control the flying boat. We will fly out of the space fragment first." But although Fairy Xingyu was worried about Su Ji, she could not do anything when she saw Su Ji healing himself. She agreed and flew to where Dongfang Yushan and the others were and replaced them. Disciples of aristocratic families. Xiaohua looked at Dongfang Yushan and the others and said, "You must have some secret techniques that can be used here. Now, there is no need to hold back. Take them out. Go to the stern and block the celestial kite beasts." Dongfang Yushan and the others looked at each other and nodded. "Yes, senior." Then, Xiaohua walked to the front of the flying boat and opened his delusion breaker Dharma eye to take a closer look. Previously, under the attacks of the celestial kite beasts, the defense of the stern of the flying boat had been broken, and the entire flying boat was shaking. At this time, Fairy Xingyu stabilized the flying boat. Although its speed did not increase, with the help of many Confucian cultivators, the flying boat finally stabilized. Senior, that triangular fragment. Xiaohua looked at it for a few seconds and pointed to a space fragment in the middle of the distance without hesitation. Fairy Xingyu was slightly stunned. She said in a low voice, "Xiaohua, according to my previous experience, the oval-shaped space fragment furthest away is the most suitable. Then there is the linear fragment on the left. That triangular fragment. Although the distance is suitable, it is the most dangerous one. We are all seriously injured now. We can't take the risk. Senior, listen to me." Although Xiaohua said, "Senior," his tone was unquestionable. He replied without hesitation. Fairy Xingyu frowned and reminded him, "Xiaohua, I know you can see some clues, but I also have a magical power that you don't know about. I think the oval-shaped fragment is the best." Senior Su said to listen to me. Xiaohua's tone was firm. There was no room for negotiation. Fairy Xingyu glanced at Su Ji, who was sitting in the distance, and her heart ached. She instantly understood why Su Ji had not let her control the flying boat when he had come out, and why he had not let the Confucian cultivators of the Dongfang family go to the stern to resist the celestial kite beasts. Forget it. At most, I will die here. Fairy Xingyu was a little sad. She thought to herself, when I encountered the thousands of celestial kite beasts, didn't I also want to die? Now that this meteor belt has inexplicably appeared, I have a chance of survival. Why should I be so stubborn? After Fairy Xingyu admitted defeat, the flying boat began to adjust its direction. Although Xiaohua did not look at Fairy Xingyu, he raised his eyebrows slightly when he saw the flying boat adjust its direction. He was a little surprised because he was still waiting for Fairy Xingyu to get angry. At this time, the huge heavenly mansion had completely disappeared. The whole earth seemed to have been torn apart by a big hand. Moreover, the tearing force of this big hand was getting stronger, and the speed of the earth cracking was getting faster. Seeing a faint golden light appear in his Dharma eye, Xiaohua understood that the golden light was the boundary of this space fragment. As long as the flying boat rushed out of this boundary, it would be considered as completely escaping from this murderous fragment of the immortal realm. Boom! At this time, the flying boat shook violently again. More than a dozen celestial kite beasts broke through the attacks of the Confucian cultivators and directly attacked the flying boat. Senior. Xiaohua was anxious. Put in more effort. It's easy for you to say that. Fairy Xingyu glared at Xiaohua and said, "You hid in the heavenly mansion to rest. I fought my way back with Su Ji. Yes, yes. Senior, you have worked hard." Xiaohua said with a smile, "Aren't we at the end? We are just one step away." "What are you talking about? Is this how you talk to your senior?" Fairy Xingyu seemed to be a little angry. Xiaohua suddenly realized that it was inappropriate to say this in front of Fairy Xingyu. He unconsciously stuck out his tongue and did not dare to say anything more. Awoo! At this time, the cries of two celestial kite beasts sounded from both sides of the flying boat. Fairy Xingyu was shocked and did not dare to say anything more to Xiaohua. She hurriedly urged the flying boat to rush into the ground. Chapter 45-26. Good. Seeing the flying boat pass through the golden light, Xiaohua's heart immediately calmed down. He secretly cheered, but just as he was about to open his mouth, he heard "Awoo." Two more beast cries rang out. The two immortal kites actually broke through the golden light and pounced towards the flying boat at the same time. Damn it! Xiaohua was surprised, but he did not panic. True qi flowed out of his body as he waved his arms outside the flying boat. Two huge fists appeared in front of the flying jade immortal beast's sharp claws. The golden fist met the sharp claws of the flying crane immortal beasts. Boom boom. Two loud explosions sounded. At the same time that the golden light shattered, the two flying crane immortal beasts were also sent tumbling away. Haha! Xiaohua howled. This is awesome! As he spoke, Xiaohua raised his hand and grabbed something in his pocket. After that, he tossed it towards the back of the flying ship. Rumble! The jade talismans that were refined using natural primordial water exploded one after another. Even though not every single one of them was able to injure the flying ship, they were still able to resist the flying ship's attacks. Of course, Xiaohua's attack was just a drop in the bucket. The flying jade immortal beasts that had rushed out of the spatial fragment were still tightly chasing after the flying boat. Moreover, even more flying jade immortal beasts were enraged and began to flap their wings madly to chase after the flying boat. Senior. Xiaohua flew in front of Fairy Xingyu and complained, "How can these flying jade immortal beasts fly out of the spatial fragment? Can't those spatial restrictions stop them?" Fairy Xingyu rolled her eyes at Xiaohua and said, "Who told you that the immortal beasts and demonic beasts in the spatial fragment can't come out? Since when did the spatial fragment have restrictions?" "Okay." Xiaohua did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Just pretend I didn't say anything. Senior, go and rest for a while. Leave this to me." Fairy Xingyu was a little worried. Xiaohua smiled and said proudly, "I'm a human Mahayana realm cultivator. In the spatial fragment of the immortal realm, I was weak. How can I still be a scholar here? This is the immortal imperial equipment of the heavenly court." Fairy Xingyu reminded him. "Even the direct disciples of the four great families can't control it very well." Xiaohua pondered for a moment and said with a smile, "Then Junior will give it a try. If there's anything inappropriate, how about Senior immediately take over?" Fairy Xingyu was also exhausted at this time and had been desperately holding on. Although they had already rushed out of the fragment of the immortal realm, the flying boat had already fallen into the meteor belt and there were thousands of immortal phalanx beasts chasing after them. Xiaohua was the only Daoist Grand Ascension Stage cultivator on the flying boat who was not injured, so who else could she rely on but him? "Come on." Fairy Xingyu nodded. However, she didn't dare to withdraw her celestial qi. She still kept half of it. Xiaohua stood where Fairy Xingyu was and looked around. The flying boat was in imminent danger. Not to mention that the defense of the entire flying boat had been breached, the flying jade immortal beasts near the flying boat had also begun to accumulate power, preparing to spit out fire pillars. The corners of Xiaohua's mouth curled up as he activated the 5 Qis unification genuine Qi in his middle dantian. Boom! As the golden light around Xiaohua shone brightly, 5 colored clouds rushed into the flying boat under his feet like a waterfall. Buzz buzz buzz. The entire airship let out an ear-piercing roar. Then on the airship, with Xiaohua as the center, 5 colored rings of light rotated like a windmill. In just a moment, the entire airship was dyed red. Shwa! Like the finishing touch of a divine brush, 5 colored clouds rushed out from both sides of the airship and instantly protected the airship. Boom! At this moment, another flying jade immortal beast pounced from the bottom of the flying boat and the fire pillar hit the flying boat. As soon as the fire pillar came into contact with the flying boat, the 5 colored clouds immediately dissipated. However, as the fire pillar was annihilated, the clouds continued to surge and quickly protected the flying boat. Roar! The flying jade immortal beast roared and flew again, smashing its huge tail at the flying boat. Unfortunately, as soon as it swung its tail, the flying boat flashed past and rushed out faster than light. Where the tail landed, the flying boat was nowhere to be seen. Boom! The flying jade immortal beast's tail did not miss. It hit another flying jade immortal beast that swooped down on the opposite side. Caught off guard, the flying jade immortal beast was shot down 1,000 feet. It was only 1,000 feet, but life and death were decided. The invisible boundary hurricane blew down and slashed diagonally on the flying jade immortal beast's tail. The huge tail flashed with crimson light and layers of marks appeared. As soon as the marks appeared, they quickly dispersed and clusters of runes rushed out. Boom! In the void, an inexplicable aura gushed out. However, as soon as this aura appeared, it was blown away by the boundary hurricane. Then, with a crisp cracking sound, the flying jade immortal beast's tail broke into several pieces. The flying jade immortal beast seemed to be in pain and lost its balance. It spread its wings again and wanted to fly up. Unfortunately, as soon as the wings landed, the boundary hurricane came out again. With a loud rumble, the wings that were almost bone were also broken. The flying jade immortal beast fell diagonally into the hurricane. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Faint sounds of wind could be heard as the kite immortal beast howled in pain. Its powerful body seemed to have been pinched by a giant hand, and its bones were crushed one by one. When the kite immortal beast's body was completely crushed, it fell another few thousand feet and was hit by an even fiercer realm storm. Awu! The kite immortal beast weakly groaned a few times before a bloody light appeared. The kite immortal beast was neatly cut into dozens of pieces of flesh and blood. These pieces of flesh only fell a few dozen feet before they were blown away by the realm storm and turned into nothingness. Roar! When a flying jade immortal beast was killed by the boundary hurricane, more flying jade immortal beasts rushed over from all directions and pounced on the flying boat. The loud whistling of the wind and the roaring of the flying boat had already covered the screams. Not many flying jade immortal beasts could see the blood of the dead. They only had eyes for the delicious flesh of the human race. Looking at the flying boat again, it did not directly rush towards the triangular space fragment as Fairy Xingyu had expected. Instead, it soared rapidly in the nearby space, like a proud phoenix spreading its colorful wings and dancing among the many ferocious beasts. Thousands of flying jade immortal beasts covered the nearby meteor belt. They roared and pounced on the flying boat, but the fire pillars and sharp claws missed the flying boat every time. Not to mention the disciples of the scholarly cultivator families who were frightened and pale. Even Fairy Xingyu, who was adjusting her breath with her eyes closed, had a slight change in expression. Seeing that the flying jade immortal beasts were angered by his provocation, Xiaohua laughed loudly. The golden light around him soared into the sky again. The flying boat shook again and flew in a spiral toward the triangular space fragment in the meteor belt. A group of flying jade immortal beasts roared crazily and chased after the flying boat. Unfortunately, they had only flown a few hundred feet when the mysterious boundary hurricane immediately attacked. The powerful flying jade immortal beasts were squashed one by one and torn apart when they fell to the ground. Seeing this, the flying jade immortal beasts who were close to the flying boat panicked and began to flee left and right. However, the more they fled, the more they were killed. The flying jade immortal beasts behind them did not know what was going on. They still chased after Xiaohua's flying boat. Just like before, after another 1,000 feet, countless blood clots were scattered again. The entire meteor belt was filled with blood mist. So this is what he's planning. Upon seeing Xiaohua fly towards the triangular spatial fragment and kill a large number of flying crane immortal beasts every time he zigzagged for 10,000 feet, Fairy Xingyu finally understood. Although it's a little difficult to fly over this triangular spatial fragment, there are many realm tornadoes along the way. The thousands of flying jade immortal beasts will chase us endlessly. If we don't kill them in this meteor belt, we won't have a chance in the future. If we lead them to the triangular space fragment, we won't have a chance of survival. Even the triangular space fragment will become a land of death in the future. However, thinking of this, Fairy Xingyu deliberately turned her head and saw that the fragment of the immortal realm had turned into several irregular fragments. These fragments were still splitting and shrinking. It wouldn't be long before they completely turned into stardust and disappeared in the meteor belt. However, if these flying jade immortal beasts don't fly out of the space fragment, I think. Alas, there's nothing to think about. These flying jade immortal beasts are ferocious beasts in the immortal realm. They are extremely powerful and have the power to fly out of the space fragment. If they are lucky enough to fly to the other side of the meteor belt, I'm afraid all the human clan cultivators and great demons of the demon clan will be killed. While Fairy Xingyu was thinking, Xiaohua steered the flying boat and flew for more than 10,000 feet. At this time, the flying boat was much closer to the triangular space fragment. A faint fragrance began to emerge in the space around the flying boat. After the flying boat, there were no more flying jade immortal beasts that could safely chase after them. The hundreds of flying jade immortal beasts closest to them were being killed by the boundary hurricanes. After this slaughter, thousands of flying jade immortal beasts, who were panicking like headless flies, began to flee in all directions toward the meteor belt in the face of death. Hundreds of them even wanted to return to the space fragment of the immortal realm. Unfortunately, what greeted them was only the cruelty of heaven and earth. What greeted them was only the resentment of the human clan cultivators they had killed earlier. They had no choice but to die. Seeing the flying jade immortal beasts being killed one by one, Fairy Xingyu's heart finally calmed down. Calmly, she smelled a strange fragrance near the flying boat. Fairy Xingyu seemed to have thought of something. A smile appeared on her face and she closed her eyes. Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu cultivated quietly. Xiaohua activated his golden body and 5 Qis unifications. He opened his delusion breaker Dharma eye and focused on controlling the immortal imperial equipment. The disciples of the 4 great families and the other families on the flying boat were dumbfounded. They had seen the power of the flying jade immortal beasts. They had never thought that there would be a human clan cultivator in this world who could easily kill thousands of flying jade immortal beasts. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.